Picture the night sky 30,000 years ago. No city lights blur the stars. No aircraft trace contrails across the heavens. Only the raw cosmos stretches overhead, a cathedral of ice crystals and burning light. The auroras dance green and gold across the polar darkness, sheets of plasma rippling like celestial silk. Meteors streak through the thin atmosphere, their tails blazing orange against the black. Comets hang in the void for months, their glowing heads visible even during the brief Arctic days. Below this cosmic theater, our ancestors huddle around fires that seem impossibly small against the vastness. They are survivors in a world that kills the unprepared. Mammoth herds thunder across frozen steppes. Saber-toothed cats prowl the edges of human settlements. The ice sheets stretch for thousands of miles, locking away so much water that the oceans sit 300 feet lower than today. These are the people who painted the caves of Lascaux and Altamira, the ones who carved Venus figurines from mammoth ivory, the ones who buried their dead with flowers and red ochre, suggesting they already understood that something exists beyond the physical world. But what did they see when they looked up at that pristine sky? The official story tells us they saw the same things we see: stars, planets, the occasional meteor. They created constellations to track the seasons. They watched the moon wax and wane. They learned to navigate by the North Star. Yet scattered across the globe, in caves and on cliff faces, they left behind images that make us pause. Discs hover above hunting scenes. Beams of light descend from circular objects. Humanoid figures wear what appear to be helmets or halos of radiance. Most archaeologists interpret these as shamanic visions, spiritual symbolism, the artistic expression of altered consciousness during religious rituals. But what if they were recording something else entirely? What if, during humanity's most vulnerable epoch, when we numbered perhaps just a few 100,000 souls scattered across the continents, we were not alone under those brilliant skies? The ice preserves many things. Mammoth carcasses emerge from Siberian permafrost, with their flesh still intact after 40,000 years. Seeds frozen in the tundra can still germinate. DNA survives in the polar ice cores, carrying genetic messages from epochs we can barely imagine. If visitors came during the Ice Age, if they left traces in the minds and memories of our ancestors, those traces would be preserved too, not in ice, but in something more durable than frozen ground. They would be preserved in myth, in art, in the collective unconscious of our species. The aurora flickers overhead tonight, just as it did then. The stars wheel in their ancient patterns. And somewhere between the official story and the realm of wild speculation, a question lingers in the cold air. What if the lights in the sky were more than natural phenomena? What if some of them were watching us, even then? The story begins in Africa, according to mainstream science. Around 200,000 years ago, anatomically modern humans first appeared in the fossil record. Their bones tell us they were physically similar to us, the same skull capacity, the same limb proportions, the same potential for complex thought. For tens of thousands of years, these early humans remained relatively confined to their African homeland. They made stone tools, controlled fire, and buried their dead. But something extraordinary happened around 70,000 years ago. They began to leave. The Great Migration started slowly. Small groups crossed into the Arabian Peninsula when sea levels were lower. They followed coastlines eastward, reaching Australia by 65,000 years ago. They spread north into Europe and Asia. By 40,000 years ago, humans had colonized most of the habitable world. This dispersal coincided with what archaeologists call the Upper Paleolithic Revolution, a sudden flowering of symbolic behavior. Cave paintings appeared in France and Spain. Carved figurines emerged across Europe. Musical instruments were fashioned from bone and ivory. Jewelry was crafted from shells and stones. The timing suggests a cognitive leap. Somewhere in this period, humans developed what scientists call behavioral modernity, the ability to think symbolically, to plan for the future, to create art for its own sake. These Ice Age humans were formidable survivors. They hunted mammoth across the frozen steppes of Europe and Siberia, organizing complex group efforts to bring down animals 10 times their size. They developed specialized tool spear throwers that increased their hunting range, bone needles that allowed them to sew fitted clothing, oil lamps that illuminated the deepest caves. Their social structures grew increasingly sophisticated. Evidence suggests they traded materials across vast distances, shells from Mediterranean beaches found in caves hundreds of miles inland, amber from the Baltic appearing in Central European sites. This requires not just individual intelligence, but collective memory and cultural transmission. The archaeological record paints a picture of gradual but accelerating innovation. Stone tool technology became more refined. Artistic expression grew more sophisticated. Settlement patterns became more complex. Yet for all their achievements, these were still small populations living on the edge of survival. Genetic evidence suggests that at one point during the Ice Age, the entire human population may have dwindled to as few as 10,000 breeding pairs. One volcanic winter, one shift in climate, one plague could have ended our story before it truly began. The accepted narrative is one of triumph through adversity. Humans succeeded through intelligence, cooperation, and adaptability. They learned to read the natural world with extraordinary precision, tracking animal migrations, predicting weather patterns, identifying edible plants across diverse environments. This baseline understanding is important. It establishes what humans were capable of achieving through their own ingenuity and determination. It shows us a species that was already remarkable, already pushing the boundaries of what seemed possible. But it also raises questions. The suddenness of behavioral modernity puzzles many researchers. Why did symbolic thinking emerge so rapidly after hundreds of thousands of years of relatively static development? What triggered the creative explosion that produced cave art, music, and complex tools seemingly overnight in evolutionary terms? The official answer involves population pressure, climate change, and the gradual accumulation of cultural knowledge. Random mutations may have enhanced cognitive abilities. Social innovations allowed information to be preserved and transmitted more effectively. These explanations are grounded in solid evidence and careful reasoning. They describe a process we can understand and verify. Meanwhile, in the painted caves of our Ice Age ancestors, strange figures dance across the walls. Circles hover in the painted sky. Beams of light connect earth and heaven. And the question whispers in the flickering shadows. What if the official story, while accurate as far as it goes, is not the complete picture? The aurora borealis still dances across the polar night, just as it did when mastodons roamed the tundra. Green curtains ripple through the darkness. Sheets of plasma pulse and shimmer, driven by solar winds that have blown across space for billions of years. Modern science explains this phenomenon with elegant precision. Charged particles from the sun interact with Earth's magnetic field. The particles spiral down along magnetic field lines, colliding with atmospheric gases. Oxygen glows green and red. Nitrogen flickers blue and purple. The result is one of nature's most spectacular light shows. But not all lights in the polar regions fit this comfortable explanation. In 1986, Japan Airlines Flight 1628 was flying over Alaska when the crew reported massive unidentified objects pacing their aircraft. The captain, Kenju Terauchi, described lights that followed them for nearly an hour, objects he estimated to be the size of aircraft carriers, visible on radar and witnessed by multiple crew members. The FIA investigated. The military tracked the objects on their screens. Yet no official explanation was ever provided beyond the standard dismissals of weather phenomena and equipment malfunction. This incident occurred over the same Arctic regions where our Ice Age ancestors once struggled for survival. The same magnetic field lines that create the aurora also seem to attract other phenomena objects that move with purpose rather than the random fluctuation of natural forces. Indigenous peoples of the Arctic have long spoken of lights that behave strangely. The Inuit describe beings that come from the stars, traveling in vessels that glow like the aurora, but move in ways no natural phenomenon can explain. These accounts stretch back through oral traditions that may preserve memories thousands of years old. Consider the possibility that Ice Age humans, with their intimate knowledge of natural patterns, would have easily distinguished between normal auroral activity and something genuinely anomalous. They knew the sky as well as we know our own neighborhoods. Every natural light show would have been familiar to them. The seasonal rhythms of aurora activity, the predictable paths of meteors, the stately movement of planets. If they painted unusual objects in their caves, if they carved strange figures on bone and antler, they were recording something that stood out against this familiar backdrop. The cave paintings at Pec Merle in France, created roughly 25,000 years ago, include spotted horses and human handprints stenciled around them. But they also include abstract symbol circles with radiating lines, grids of dots, and elongated shapes that seem to hover above the ground. Traditional interpretation views these as shamanic symbols or early astronomical observations. But examine them more closely. The circles often appear in groupings, connected by lines or beams. They repositioned above landscape features as if they occupy the three-dimensional sky space rather than existing as flat symbols. At Kimberley in Australia, Aboriginal rock art dating back 40,000 years includes figures they call the Wangina beings with large round heads, prominent eyes, and radiating halos. The Aboriginal people say these beings came from the sky and taught them the laws of civilization before departing again to the stars. The artwork spans millennia, created by countless generations who maintained consistent iconographic traditions. Either this represents one of the longest-running religious traditions in human history, or it records encounters that occurred repeatedly across vast spans of time. In the Sahara, when it was still green grassland during the African human period, Neolithic peoples created rock art at Tassili Najur that includes figures in what appear to be environmental suits. The beings have elongated limbs and large heads enclosed in helmet-like coverings. French ethnologist Henry Lote dubbed one figure the Great Martian God, though such interpretations remain controversial in academic circles. What unites these far-flung artistic traditions is their consistent depiction of beings and objects that do and match any known natural phenomena. The artists had intimate knowledge of their environments. They could render animals with photographic accuracy. They understood light, shadow, and proportion. When these same skilled observers created images of circular objects, radiating beams, and humanoid figures with unusual proportions, they were recording something specific. Whether that something originated in shamanic visions or in actual encounters remains an open question. The polar regions continue to generate unexplained sightings today. Military installations in Alaska and northern Canada routinely track objects that perform maneuvers no known aircraft can accomplish. Perhaps the ice preserves more than mammoth carcasses and ancient pollen. Perhaps it preserves a pattern of visitation that began when humanity was young and vulnerable, scattered in small bands across a dangerous world. The aurora still flickers green and gold across the polar night, but other lights move through that same darkness, lights that follow their own logic, their own purposes, their own ancient rhythms that connect the present moment to the deepest memories of our species. In the Italian Alps, where glacial valleys carve deep shadows between peaks, lies Val Camonica, a repository of rock art spanning 8,000 years of human expression. More than 300,000 petroglyphs cover the stone surfaces, making it one of the world's largest collections of prehistoric art. Most of the carvings show exactly what archaeologists expect: hunters pursuing deer, warriors wielding spears, shamans conducting rituals. The artistic progression follows a logical timeline: early Paleolithic hunting scenes, evolving into Bronze Age ceremonial depictions, and eventually Roman inscriptions. But scattered among these conventional images are figures that challenge explanation. They wear what appear to be helmets or halos of radiating lines. Their bodies are often elongated, with large heads and prominent eyes. Some seem to float above the ground rather than standing on it. Others are connected to circular or disc-shaped objects by lines that suggest beams of energy. The mainstream interpretation classifies these as religious or shamanic imagery: gods, spirits, or altered consciousness visions rendered in stone. This explanation works for isolated examples, but becomes strained when similar iconography appears across vast distances and time periods with no apparent cultural connection. At Tassili Niger in Algeria, rock art created when the Sahara was still fertile. Grassland shows beings with rounded heads, large eyes, and what appear to be breathing apparatus or environmental suits. The figures often have elongated limbs and seem to float or hover rather than walk. French archaeologist Henry Lot's expedition in the 1950s documented thousands of these images, many dating back 8,000 years or more. The artistic style is remarkably consistent across different sites and time periods. If these were purely imaginative religious symbols, we might expect more variation in how different cultures depicted them. Instead, we find a surprising uniformity in certain key features: the helmet-like headgear, the elongated proportions, the association with circular objects or beams of light. In the American Southwest, ancestral Puebloan petroglyphs include figures with similar characteristics. At Newspaper Rock in Utah, among images of bighorn sheep and human hunters, are beings with large circular heads, prominent eyes, and what appear to be antennae or projecting elements from their heads. The Hopi people, whose ancestors may have created some of these images, maintain oral traditions about the Kishinas beings who came from the stars to teach humanity before returning to their celestial home. The rock art seems to provide visual confirmation of these ancient stories. Moving across the Pacific to Australia, the Wandjina figures of Kimberley rock art display the same essential characteristics: large rounded heads, prominent eyes, and radiating halos or helmet-like coverings. Aboriginal traditions consistently describe these beings as sky visitors who brought knowledge and then departed. The temporal and geographical distribution of these similar images presents a puzzle. If they represent purely symbolic or religious concepts, how did such specific iconographic conventions spread across continents and millennia? Cultural diffusion can explain some similarities, but the consistency suggests either a shared archetypal experience or recurring encounters with similar phenomena. Consider the technical skill required to create these images. The artists who carved them demonstrated sophisticated understanding of proportion, perspective, and symbolic representation. They could render familiar subjects, animals, humans, tools with remarkable accuracy. When these same skilled observers created images of unusual beings or objects, they were recording something specific to their experience. The question becomes whether that experience was purely internal shamanic visions, dreams, or religious concepts, or whether it reflected encounters with external phenomena. Some researchers suggest the helmet-like features might represent actual protective headgear worn by visitors from a more technologically advanced culture. The elongated proportions could indicate beings adapted to different gravitational or atmospheric conditions. The association with circular objects might document craft or vehicles used for transportation. These interpretations remain speculative, operating at the edges of acceptable archaeological theory. Mainstream science requires extraordinary evidence for extraordinary claims, and rock art alone cannot prove contact with non-human intelligence. Yet the consistency of the imagery across vast distances and time periods demands explanation. Either humanity developed remarkably similar religious concepts independently across the globe, or these images record encounters with phenomena that transcended individual cultures and historical periods. The petroglyphs continue to weather slowly in their mountain and desert locations. Wind and rain gradually erode the carved lines, but they have already preserved their mystery for millennia, carrying forward images that challenge our understanding of human history and our place in the cosmos. In Val Camonica, visitors can still trace the ancient lines carved into rock, following the vision of artists who worked by firelight 8,000 years ago. What they saw, what they experienced, what they felt compelled to record in stone, these questions remain as fresh as the day the first chisel struck the living rock. Around the fires of Ice Age camps, when winter nights stretched endless across the frozen world, our ancestors shared stories. These weren't merely entertainment for people who lived without books or screens. They were survival manuals encoded in narrative, carrying essential knowledge through generations. The stories told how to track mammoth herds across the steppes. They preserved the locations of freshwater springs that wouldn't freeze. They mapped seasonal patterns of animal migration, weather systems, and resource availability. Most importantly, they carried cultural memory, the accumulated wisdom that separated successful human groups from those that vanished into the ice. But some stories spoke of things that don't fit the conventional understanding of Ice Age life. The Hopi people of the American Southwest maintain oral traditions about the ant people beings who saved humanity during previous world destructions by taking them underground. According to Hopi legend, these beings lived beneath the earth and emerged to help humans when cataclysms threatened their survival. The stories describe the ant people as industrious, intelligent, and technologically sophisticated. They possessed knowledge of underground engineering, food preservation, and survival techniques that allowed them to thrive in subterranean environments. When surface conditions became uninhabitable, they shared this knowledge with humans. From a mythological perspective, these could simply be metaphorical tales about resilience and cooperation. But consider the timing implied by Hopi oral chronology. The traditions speak of world destructions that correlate roughly with known climate, catastrophes including the end of the Ice Age. If these stories preserve actual memories from 12,000 years ago, they suggest contact between Ice Age humans and beings with advanced survival technologies during periods of global crisis. The Inuit of the Arctic maintain similar traditions about star beings who descended from the sky during times of hardship. These entities taught hunting techniques, tool-making, and survival strategies adapted to polar environments. They came in vehicles that glowed like the aurora, but moved with purpose and intelligence. Inuit oral traditions show remarkable stability over time. Stories told today can often be traced back centuries through careful genealogies of storytellers. If these accounts of star beings reflect actual experiences, they would represent some of the oldest continuous cultural memories of contact with non-human intelligence. Moving across the Bering Land Bridge that connected Asia and North America during the Ice Age, similar stories appear among indigenous peoples of Siberia. The Evenkt people speak of beings who came from the Iron Star and taught their ancestors how to work metal and survive in the harsh tundra environment. These traditions become particularly intriguing when considered alongside archaeological evidence for surprisingly early metallurgy in the Arctic. Copper tools appear in some northern sites, thousands of years before the supposed introduction of metalworking to these regions through southern cultural diffusion. In Europe, where Ice Age cave art reaches its greatest sophistication, Celtic and Germanic myths preserve stories of the Tuatha Dé Danann and similar sky peoples. These beings possessed advanced technologies, flying vehicles, devastating weapons, and knowledge of healing and agriculture. They taught humanity essential skills before departing to hidden realms. The consistency of these themes across continents and cultures suggests either remarkable convergent mythological evolution or preservation of actual historical encounters. Sky beings descend during times of crisis. They share crucial survival knowledge. They demonstrate advanced technologies. Then they depart, leaving behind communities better equipped to survive environmental challenges. From a rational perspective, these could represent cultural memories of contact between different human groups at varying technological levels. Advanced Arctic peoples might have appeared godlike to groups struggling with Ice Age survival. Knowledge of metalworking, astronomy, or engineering could easily be interpreted as supernatural wisdom. But some details in the oral traditions resist easy explanation through conventional cultural contact. The descriptions of vehicles that glow and move through the sky, the accounts of beings with unusual physical characteristics, the timing that consistently links these encounters to global catastrophes and climate shifts. Consider also the survival value of accurate cultural memory during the Ice Age. Groups that preserve precise information about past events, environmental patterns, and survival techniques would have significant advantages over those with less accurate oral traditions. This creates a paradox. If Ice Age peoples maintained highly accurate cultural memories about practical matters and archaeological evidence suggests they did, why would they simultaneously preserve elaborate fictional accounts about sky beings? The dedication of precious storytelling time to purely imaginary encounters would represent a costly waste of cultural transmission capacity. Perhaps these stories survive because they record real encounters that occurred during humanity's most vulnerable period. Perhaps sky beings did descend when our species numbered only in the thousands, sharing knowledge that helped us survive the transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene. The stories continue to be told around contemporary fires in modern indigenous communities that maintain ancient traditions. They carry forward accounts of contact that may date back to when glaciers covered much of the northern hemisphere and our ancestors painted mysterious figures on cave walls by flickering firelight. Whether literal history or profound metaphor, these myths preserve something essential about the human experience during our species' formative epochs. They suggest that even in our earliest memories, we were not alone under the vast dome of stars. 12,900 years ago, something catastrophic happened to Earth. The archaeological record shows a sharp boundary, a black line of charcoal and impact materials that separates the Pleistocene from the Holocene epoch. Below this line, we find the bones of Ice Age megafauna, mammoths, giant ground sloths, saber-toothed cats. Above it, these creatures vanish forever. Mainstream science calls this the Younger Dryas boundary. The period that followed the Younger Dryas itself saw a sudden return to Ice Age conditions that lasted over 1,000 years. Glaciers advanced, sea levels dropped. Ecosystems collapsed across much of North America and Northern Europe. For decades, scientists debated what caused this dramatic climate reversal. Theories included volcanic eruptions, changes in ocean circulation, and gradual shifts in solar radiation. But none fully explained the sudden, violent nature of the transition. Then researchers began finding evidence of cosmic impact. Microscopic diamonds formed under extreme pressure. Spherules of melted rock scattered across multiple continents. Elevated levels of iridium and other elements associated with extraterrestrial objects, all dating precisely to the Younger Dryas boundary. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis suggests that a comet or asteroid, possibly fragments of a larger object, struck Earth around 12,900 years ago. The impacts triggered massive wildfires, atmospheric disruption, and climate chaos. The Ice Age megafauna, already stressed by changing conditions, couldn't survive the additional catastrophe. This theory remains controversial within mainstream science. Critics argue the evidence is inconsistent and that multiple causes better explain the extinction pattern. Supporters counter that cosmic impact provides the only mechanism powerful enough to cause such sudden global changes. But consider the implications if the impact hypothesis is correct. 12,900 years ago, humans around the world would have witnessed one of the most terrifying spectacles in our planet's recent history. Imagine watching fragments of a disintegrating comet streak across the night sky, growing brighter and larger over the course of days or weeks. The objects would have been visible during daylight hours as they approached Earth. Multiple impacts would have lit the horizon with flashes brighter than the sun, followed by mushroom clouds of debris and steam. The immediate effects would have been devastating. Blast waves flattening forests for hundreds of miles around impact sites. Massive tsunamis if objects struck the oceans. Ejected material raining down as molten glass spherules, igniting wildfires across entire continents. Within days, the atmosphere would have darkened with smoke and dust. Temperatures would have plummeted as sunlight was blocked. The carefully balanced ecosystems that supported both megafauna and human populations would have collapsed in a matter of months. For the scattered bands of Ice Age humans, this catastrophe would have marked the literal end of their world. Everything they knew, the animal species they hunted, the plant communities they depended on, the climate patterns their ancestors had learned to predict, would have changed overnight. Yet humanity survived. Small populations persevered through the 1,000-year nuclear winter that followed. They adapted to new ecosystems, developed new technologies, and eventually emerged from the Younger Dryas to establish the agricultural civilizations that marked the beginning of recorded history. This survival raises intriguing questions. How did scattered hunter-gatherer groups, numbering perhaps only tens of thousands worldwide, manage to endure such a comprehensive environmental collapse? What knowledge or assistance might have been available to help them through the crisis? Indigenous traditions worldwide preserve accounts of sky fires, great floods, and world-ending catastrophes that correlate surprisingly well with the timing of the Younger Dryas event. These stories often include references to beings from the sky who provided warnings, assistance, or knowledge that helped survivors endure the catastrophe. The Hopi speak of the blue star Kashina that appeared before the destruction of the Third World. Aboriginal Australians describe the rainbow serpent that brought both destruction and renewal. Hindu texts reference the cosmic battles between gods and demons that marked the end of ages. If these traditions preserve actual memories from the Younger Dryas period, they suggest that the cosmic catastrophe was not only witnessed by humans, but that the witnesses received some form of guidance or intervention that helped them survive. Consider the technological leap that occurred immediately after the Younger Dryas ended. Within a few thousand years, humans developed agriculture, domesticated animals, built permanent settlements, and created complex social hierarchies. This Neolithic revolution happened remarkably quickly after the climate stabilized. The conventional explanation attributes this rapid development to population pressure and environmental changes that favored farming over hunting. But the speed of the transition suggests that much of the necessary knowledge might have been preserved from before the catastrophe or learned from sources outside normal cultural development. Recent archaeological discoveries keep pushing back the dates of sophisticated human achievements. Göbekli Tepe in Turkey, with its precisely carved stone pillars and complex astronomical alignments, was built almost immediately after the Younger Dryas ended. The knowledge required for such construction implies continuity with pre-catastrophe civilizations or contact with others who possessed advanced understanding of astronomy, engineering, and symbolic representation. The cosmic catastrophe that ended the Ice Age may have been witnessed not only by humans, but by other intelligences who took interest in our species' survival. The sky fires that marked the boundary between epochs might have attracted observers, visitors, or guardians who recognized the critical moment in human development. Whether through preserved knowledge, outside assistance, or remarkable resilience, humanity emerged from its closest brush with extinction to build the civilizations that eventually reached for the stars themselves. The black line in the geological record marks not just the end of the Pleistocene, but perhaps the beginning of our guided journey toward becoming a spacefaring species. In southeastern Turkey, on a limestone ridge overlooking the Mesopotamian plain, stands humanity's oldest known temple complex. Göbekli Tepe, the Potbelly Hill, predates Stonehenge by 6,000 years. It was built before the invention of writing, before the development of agriculture, before humans had supposedly learned to organize complex construction projects. According to mainstream archaeology, this shouldn't exist. The site consists of massive stone circles, each containing pillars that tower up to 16 feet high and weigh as much as 16 tons. The pillars are carved with intricate reliefs of animals, lions, bulls, wild boars, snakes, and birds of prey. Some bear abstract symbols that might represent early forms of writing or astronomical notation. The precision of the carving rivals work from much later civilizations. The animals display anatomical accuracy and artistic sophistication that suggests generations of refined sculptural tradition. Yet this complex was built around 9,500 BCE, when humans were supposedly just beginning to transition from hunting and gathering to settled agriculture. The site's orientation provides additional mysteries. The stone circles align with certain stars and constellations, particularly with the constellation Cygnus, which would have been prominent in the northern sky when Göbekli Tepe was constructed. The builders demonstrated sophisticated knowledge of astronomical cycles and stellar positions. But perhaps most intriguingly, many of the carved reliefs focus on celestial themes. Vultures appear frequently, their wings spread wide as they soar through carved skies. In ancient Near Eastern symbolism, vultures often represented souls ascending to the heavens or messengers, carrying spirits between earthly and celestial realms. Other carvings show what appear to be celestial objects. Circular forms with radiating lines suggest suns, stars, or other light sources. Some researchers interpret certain abstract symbols as representations of comets or other astronomical phenomena. The site's sudden appearance in the archaeological record poses fundamental questions about human development. Where did the knowledge come from to quarry, transport, and precisely position these massive stones? How did hunter-gatherer societies develop the organizational structures necessary to coordinate such complex construction projects? The conventional answer involves gradual social evolution driven by climate change at the end of the Ice Age. As the environment became more hospitable, human populations grew larger and more settled. Religious or ceremonial needs provided motivation for monumental architecture. But this explanation struggles with the timeline. Göbekli Tepe appears essentially fully formed, with no apparent developmental sequence leading up to its construction. The oldest circles show the most sophisticated carving and planning. If anything, the site's later phases show declining artistic quality rather than improvement. Alternative theories suggest that Göbekli Tepe preserves knowledge from an earlier, more advanced civilization that was destroyed during the Younger Dryas catastrophe. The builders might have been survivors, carrying forward architectural and astronomical traditions from before the global climate disaster. This preservation hypothesis gained support from the site's deliberate burial. Around 8,000 BCE, the entire complex was carefully covered with tons of soil and rubble. This wasn't abandonment or accidental burial, it was intentional preservation, as if the builders wanted to protect something important for future discovery. The astronomical alignments add another layer of mystery. The site's orientation toward Cygnus suggests its builders possess detailed knowledge of stellar precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes constellations to shift position over thousands of years. Calculating these positions accurately requires generations of careful observation or access to astronomical knowledge accumulated over vast time periods. Local Kurdish legends preserved in oral tradition speak of this site as a place where sky beings once descended to teach humanity. These stories describe visitors from the stars who shared knowledge of construction, astronomy, and agriculture before departing again to the heavens. If taken literally, these accounts suggest that Göbekli Tepe might have been built as a communication site or meeting place between humans and non-terrestrial visitors. The astronomical alignments could have served as a cosmic calendar, marking times when such encounters were most likely to occur. The carved animals might encode specific information about these encounters. Recent analysis has suggested that some of the animal groupings correspond to constellations as they appeared in the ancient sky. If this interpretation is correct, the pillars might function as a stone library, preserving astronomical data in symbolic form. The vulture imagery becomes particularly significant in this context. If the site commemorated contact with beings who traveled between earth and sky, vultures as creatures that soar highest among Earth's animals would be appropriate symbols for intermediaries between terrestrial and celestial realms. The precision of the site's construction suggests access to sophisticated surveying and engineering knowledge. The massive pillars were quarried from bedrock, transported across difficult terrain, and erected with millimeter precision. This level of accuracy typically requires metal tools and mechanical devices that supposedly didn't exist in 9500 BCE. Perhaps most mysteriously, Göbekli Tepe was not built for practical purposes. No evidence suggests people live there permanently. No storage areas, workshops, or domestic spaces have been identified. The site appears to have been purely ceremonial, a sacred space dedicated to activities we can only guess at. Recent excavations have revealed that Göbekli Tepe is much larger than initially thought. Ground-penetrating radar indicates additional circles buried beneath the soil, suggesting the visible complex represents only a fraction of the original construction. If fully excavated, the site might prove even more impressive and mysterious than currently imagined. The temple complex stands today much as it did 12,000 years ago, its carved pillars reaching toward the same stars that guided its builders. Whether constructed as a monument to human achievement, a meeting place for cosmic encounters, or a stone library preserving ancient knowledge, Göbekli Tepe challenges our understanding of humanity's capabilities during the dawn of civilization. The sky beings of Kurdish legend may be metaphorical, but the astronomical knowledge encoded in the site's alignments is demonstrably real. Someone possessed sophisticated understanding of celestial mechanics 11.5 millennia ago. The question remains, where did that knowledge originate, and why was it preserved in stone on a hilltop in Turkey? In the marshes where the Tigris and Euphrates rivers meet the Persian Gulf, ancient Mesopotamian civilization flourished for thousands of years. The Sumerians, Babylonians, and Assyrians built ziggurats that reached toward heaven, developed the first writing systems, and created mathematical concepts we still use today. But according to their own records, they didn't develop these achievements independently. They learned them from visitors who emerged from the sea. The Babylonian priest Berossus, writing in the 3rd century BCE, preserved ancient Sumerian accounts of beings called the Awanas. These entities appeared as amphibious creatures, part fish, part human, who rose from the Persian Gulf during the day to teach civilization to primitive humans, then returned to the water at night. The Awanas taught the arts of writing, mathematics, agriculture, and astronomy. They showed humans how to build cities, establish laws, and organize complex societies. They shared knowledge of metallurgy, medicine, and engineering that allowed Mesopotamian civilization to flourish. Most scholars interpret these accounts as mythological symbolic representations of cultural exchange between different human populations or personifications of natural forces, like the life-giving waters of the rivers. But examine the descriptions more closely. The Awanas were said to wear garments that covered their entire bodies, protecting them from the terrestrial environment. They possessed advanced knowledge that they shared systematically, as if following a deliberate educational program. Most intriguingly, they returned each night to vehicles or dwellings beneath the water. Modern UFO researchers have noted similarities between these ancient accounts in contemporary reports of UFOs, unidentified submerged objects. Naval personnel and civilian witnesses describe craft that emerge from the ocean, display advanced flight capabilities, then disappear back beneath the waves. If the Awan-Nis accounts preserve memories of actual encounters, they suggest that contact between humans and non-terrestrial intelligence might have occurred repeatedly throughout history, with visitors using oceanic environments as basis for their activities. The Persian Gulf region offers practical advantages for such operations. The waters are relatively shallow and calm. The coastline provides easy access to human populations. The river deltas create secluded areas where unusual activities might go unnoticed by most observers. Archaeological evidence from early Mesopotamian sites shows remarkably rapid development of sophisticated technologies. Cuneiform writing appears essentially fully formed in the earliest tablets. Mathematical concepts like place notation and the base 60 system emerge without apparent developmental phases. Astronomical knowledge demonstrates precision that typically requires generations of careful observation. This sudden appearance of advanced knowledge parallels the pattern described in the Awan-Zakot systematic transmission of information by teachers who possessed capabilities beyond normal human achievement. The amphibious nature of the Awan-Nis might reflect practical requirements rather than mythological symbolism. Beings adapted to different atmospheric or pressure conditions might need protective suits that could function both underwater and in terrestrial environments. Vehicles designed for space travel might also be capable of underwater operation, using similar principles for navigation in fluid media. The timing of the Awan-Nis activities corresponds roughly with the end of the Younger Dryas period and the beginning of the Holocene epoch. If cosmic visitors took interest in human development, the post-glacial period would represent a crucial moment when climate stabilization allowed the development of agriculture and permanent settlements. Contemporary naval reports continue to document objects that behave similarly to the ancient descriptions of Awan-Nis vehicles. Submarines track objects moving at impossible speeds beneath the ocean surface. Radar operators observe craft that emerge from the water, accelerate beyond the capabilities of known technology, then disappear back into the depths. The U.S. Navy has officially acknowledged the existence of unidentified aerial phenomena that demonstrate transmedium capabilities, moving seamlessly between air and water in ways that conventional physics suggests should be impossible. Perhaps the Awan-Nis accounts preserve humanity as earliest recorded encounters with intelligence that uses Earth as oceans as operational basis. Perhaps the fish garments, described by ancient witnesses, were actually environmental suits designed for beings who needed protection from terrestrial conditions. The marshlands of Mesopotamia remain much as they were thousands of years ago. The same rivers flow toward the same sea. The same stars wheel overhead. And in the deepest parts of the Persian Gulf, where ancient witnesses claimed the Awan-Nis returned each night, the dark water keeps its secrets as it has for millennia. Whether mythological teachers or actual visitors, the Awan-Nis represent humanity's acknowledgement that civilization arose not through gradual development alone, but through contact with intelligence that emerged from realms beyond normal human experience. The fish beings of ancient Mesopotamia swim still through the collective memory of our species, carrying knowledge that transformed hunter-gatherers into the builders of the first cities. Deep within the permafrost of Siberia and the glacial ice of high mountain passes, the ancient dead wait in perfect preservation. Ice mummies emerge periodically from melting glaciers, their clothing, tools, and even their last meals intact after thousands of years in frozen storage. Most of these discoveries fit comfortably within conventional archaeology. The Iceman found in the Alps carried copper tools and wore expertly crafted leather garments typical of Copper Age Europe. Scythian mummies from the Siberian steppes display the elaborate tattoos and burial goods described in classical historical sources. But occasionally, the ice yields up witnesses that raise uncomfortable questions about what humans encountered during the deep past. In 1993, Russian archaeologists working in the Altai Mountains of Siberia discovered the Yukok princess, a mummy so perfectly preserved that her elaborate tattoos remained vivid after 2,500 years. The woman's burial goods suggested high status within Scythian society, and her physical remains showed evidence of medical treatments using sophisticated surgical techniques. But the Yukok princess also displayed unusual cranial characteristics. Her skull showed elongation that couldn't be explained by known cultural practices of head binding or deformation. The bone structure suggested developmental patterns that didn't match normal human variation. Local Altai people, whose ancestors had lived in the region for millennia, strongly opposed the removal of the mummy from her burial site. They claimed she was one of the guardians who protected the region from malevolent forces, and that disturbing her would bring catastrophe. Shortly after the mummy was removed for study, the Altai region experienced a series of unusual seismic events, including several significant earthquakes that local people attributed to the guardian's anger. Whether coincidental or not, the timing struck many observers as ominous. More intriguingly, the Yukok princess wore a headdress decorated with what appeared to be symbolic representations of flying creatures or celestial phenomena. The imagery didn't match known Scythian artistic traditions, suggesting influence from unknown cultural sources. In the Andes Mountains of South America, mummified remains occasionally emerge from high-altitude sites where thin air and constant cold create natural preservation conditions. Some of these discoveries have yielded individuals with cranial characteristics similar to those found in Siberian sites, elongated skull shapes that do and correspond to known cultural practices or genetic variations. The Paracas mummies of Peru, dating back over 2,000 years, show extreme cranial elongation that some researchers argue cannot be explained by intentional head deformation alone. The bone structure suggests developmental patterns that would require genetic differences from normal human populations. DNA analysis of these remains has produced conflicting and controversial results. Some studies suggest unusual genetic markers that don't correspond to known human populations. Others argue that the results reflect contamination or analytical errors rather than genuine genetic anomalies. The controversy surrounding these findings reflects the broader challenge of interpreting unusual archaeological discoveries within conventional frameworks. Evidence that suggests non-human influence or contact faces enormous skeptical scrutiny, regardless of its quality or consistency. But consider the preservation advantage offered by ice and high-altitude environments. While organic materials typically decay within centuries or millennia, frozen conditions can preserve soft tissues, DNA, and even cellular structures across vast time spans. If contact occurred between humans and non-terrestrial beings during prehistoric periods, evidence of such encounters might survive preferentially in frozen environments. Hybrid individuals, unusual artifacts, or preserved tissues showing non-human characteristics would remain intact in ice, while similar evidence from temperate regions decomposed completely. The geographic distribution of anomalous mummy finds follows an interesting pattern. High mountain passes, polar regions, and other extreme environments, precisely the locations where ice preservation occurs, yield a disproportionate number of individuals with unusual physical characteristics or cultural associations. These same regions feature prominently in indigenous traditions about sky beings and otherworldly visitors. Tibetan Buddhist texts describe aerial vehicles and non-human beings who appeared in high mountain regions. Andean legends speak of star beings who descended to high-altitude sites to interact with human populations. Recent advances in DNA sequencing and forensic analysis have made it possible to extract genetic information from increasingly ancient and degraded specimens. As these techniques improve, we may be able to resolve questions about the anomalous characteristics observed in some ice-preserved remains. But the scientific community remains reluctant to pursue research that might support unconventional interpretations of human history. Studies suggesting genetic anomalies or non-human influence face significant barriers to publication and funding, regardless of their methodological rigor. The frozen witnesses continue to emerge from melting glaciers and thawing permafrost. Climate change is accelerating the release of materials that have been locked in ice for millennia, creating unprecedented opportunities to examine evidence from humanity's deep past. Whether these discoveries will confirm conventional understanding of human development or reveal evidence of contact with non-human intelligence remains to be seen. But the ice keeps perfect records, preserving details that would vanish completely in any other environment. In the high mountains and polar regions where our ancestors once struggled to survive, the ancient dead wait in their frozen tombs. They carry with them the physical evidence of their lives, their culture, and their encounters with phenomena that may have shaped human development in ways we are only beginning to understand. The witnesses are emerging from the ice. Their testimony, written in bone and preserved in DNA, may finally reveal the true story of humanity's formative encounters with intelligence from beyond our world. In 1929, scholars examining the archives of Topkapi Palace in Istanbul discovered a parchment map that challenged everything they thought they knew about the history of exploration. The Piri Reis map, drawn by the Ottoman admiral and cartographer Piri ibn Hagi Mehmed in 1513, showed the Atlantic Ocean with remarkable accuracy, including coastlines that Europeans weren't supposed to have discovered yet. The map depicts the eastern coast of South America, the western coast of Africa, and most mysteriously, the northern coast of Antarctica. But Antarctica wasn't officially discovered until 1820, over 3 centuries after Piri Reis created his chart. Even more puzzling, the map shows Antarctica without ice cover, revealing the underlying topology of the continent. Modern geological surveys using ground-penetrating radar have confirmed that the coastline depicted on the Piri Reis map matches the actual shape of the Antarctic landmass beneath its ice sheet. The ice has covered Antarctica for millions of years. How could a 16th century cartographer have known what the continent looked like without its frozen coating? Piri Reis himself provided part of the answer. In notes on the map, he explains that he compiled it from over 20 source charts, including maps drawn by Christopher Columbus and others dating back to antiquity. He was working from much older materials, some allegedly dating back thousands of years. This suggests that accurate geographical knowledge existed long before the supposed age of exploration. Someone had mapped these coastlines in extraordinary detail at a time when conventional history insists such exploration was impossible. The Mercator projection used in portions of the Piri Reis map requires sophisticated mathematical knowledge and understanding of spherical geometry. The projection accurately represents the curved surface of Earth on a flat chart, compensating for distortions that would otherwise make navigation impossible. This mathematical sophistication supposedly wasn't developed until the Renaissance, yet it appears to have been used in source materials that predate European maritime exploration by centuries or millennia. Other ancient maps display similar anomalies. The Orontius Phineus map of 1531 shows Antarctica as a continental landmass with accurate relative proportions and geographic features. The Philippe Bauchet map of 1754 depicts Antarctica divided by a waterway that modern surveys have confirmed lies beneath the ice sheet. These maps suggest the existence of a sophisticated cartographic tradition that preserved geographical knowledge across vast time periods. The accuracy of the coastline representations implies direct observation and measurement rather than speculation or artistic interpretation. But who could have conducted such surveys during periods when conventional history places humanity in hunter-gatherer or early agricultural phases of development? The precision required for accurate ocean mapping typically demands advanced navigation techniques, mathematical knowledge, and organizational capabilities associated with much later civilizations. One explanation involves lost civilizations' advanced human cultures that developed sophisticated technologies before being destroyed by natural catastrophes or other causes. Survivors might have preserved cartographic knowledge in isolated communities that passed it down through generations until it reached historical cartographers like Piri Reis. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis provides a potential mechanism for such civilizational destruction and knowledge preservation. If advanced human cultures existed before the cosmic catastrophe 12,900 years ago, survivors might have carried geographical and astronomical knowledge forward into the post-glacial period. But another possibility emerges when we consider the precision of these ancient maps alongside other anomalies in human history. The accuracy of Antarctic coastline representation suggests aerial or satellite-level observation capabilities. The mathematical sophistication implies access to advanced surveying and projection techniques. If non-human intelligence took interest in Earth during humanity's formative periods, comprehensive planetary mapping would be a logical activity for visitors conducting long-term observation programs. Such maps might have been shared with human populations as part of broader knowledge transfer initiatives. The accuracy of ancient star charts and astronomical calculations supports this interpretation. Babylonian astronomers possessed mathematical techniques for predicting planetary positions that were redeveloped by European science until the Renaissance. Maya astronomers calculated the length of the solar year with precision that modern instruments can barely improve upon. This astronomical knowledge often appears suddenly in the historical record, without apparent developmental sequences. Like the accurate geographical maps, it suggests access to information sources beyond normal cultural development processes. Indigenous traditions worldwide preserve accounts of sky beings who shared geographical and astronomical knowledge with early human populations. These stories often specifically mention maps or charts that showed distant lands, star positions, and navigation routes across vast distances. The Dogon people of West Africa maintain traditions about visitors from the Sirius star system who shared detailed astronomical information, including knowledge of Sirius B, a white dwarf companion star that was discovered by Western astronomers until 1862 and wasn't photographed until 1970. If these traditions preserve memories of actual contact, the advanced maps appearing in historical archives might represent fragments of much more comprehensive geographical and astronomical datasets shared by non-human visitors with early civilizations. The maps continue to puzzle researchers who study them. Computer analysis confirms their accuracy in representing coastlines and topographical features that were artificially known when they were drawn. The mathematical projections demonstrate understanding of advanced cartographic principles that conventional history places much later in human development. Whether preserved from lost human civilizations or inherited from non-human sources, these ancient maps suggest that accurate geographical knowledge existed thousands of years before the supposed beginning of systematic exploration. They hint at a hidden history of contact, travel, and knowledge sharing that challenges conventional understanding of human capabilities during prehistoric periods. The charts exist today in museums and archives, their parchment surfaces bearing witness to knowledge that transcends the accepted timeline of human achievement. They speak of voyages taken, coasts mapped, and knowledge preserved across the vast expanses of both ocean and time. Before clocks and calendars, before GPS and satellite navigation, our ancestors read time and direction from the wheeling stars. They tracked the moon's phases to measure months, followed the sun's path to mark seasons, and used constellation positions to navigate across trackless wilderness and open ocean. This astronomical knowledge was essential for survival. Knowing when to plant crops, when to begin seasonal migrations, when to expect storms or droughts meant the difference between prosperity and starvation. Arctic peoples used star positions to navigate during months of polar night. Desert nomads found water sources and trade routes by reading celestial patterns invisible to untrained eyes. The precision achieved by ancient astronomers often astounds modern researchers. Maya calculations of planetary cycles show accuracy to within minutes of arc across centuries of observation. Polynesian navigators could cross thousands of miles of open ocean using only star positions, wave patterns, and bird behavior, reaching tiny islands with unerring precision. This knowledge developed gradually through generations of careful observation and mathematical refinement. But some ancient astronomical achievements suggest access to information beyond what naked-eye observation could reasonably provide. The Antikythera mechanism, discovered in a Greek shipwreck dating to the 1st century BCE, contains bronze gears calibrated to track the positions of the sun, moon, and planets with extraordinary precision. The device could predict eclipses, calculate Olympic Games schedules, and track complex astronomical cycles that weren't officially rediscovered until the Renaissance. The mechanism's sophistication rivals mechanical computers built in the 18th century. Its existence suggests that ancient Greek astronomers possessed mathematical and engineering knowledge far beyond what surviving texts indicate. Either significant mathematical traditions have been lost to history, or ancient astronomers had access to information sources we don't fully understand. Stonehenge demonstrates similarly advanced astronomical knowledge. The stone circle aligns precisely with multiple solar and lunar events, summer and winter solstices, spring and fall equinoxes, and complex lunar standstill cycles that repeat every 18.6 years. The positioning required understanding of astronomical relationships that typically take centuries of observation to establish. But Stonehenge was built in phases spanning over 1,500 years, with the earliest construction dating to around 3100 BCE. The astronomical alignments appear in the earliest phases, suggesting that Neolithic peoples possessed sophisticated knowledge of celestial mechanics thousands of years before the development of mathematical astronomy in classical civilizations. Similar precision appears in megalithic sites across Europe and beyond. Newgrange in Ireland, Maeshowe in Scotland, and Gavini's in France all demonstrate exact astronomical orientations built into their stone architecture. The consistency of these alignments across vast distances and time periods suggests a shared astronomical tradition of remarkable sophistication. The knowledge required for such precise alignments goes beyond simple observation of seasonal sun positions. Tracking lunar cycles, planetary movements, and precession requires mathematical understanding that conventional history associates with much later periods of human development. Precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that causes constellations to shift position over thousands of years, particularly challenges conventional timelines. Ancient Egyptian and Hindu texts contain references to precessional cycles that require observation periods spanning millennia. Calculating these cycles accurately demands both advanced mathematics and organizational continuity across vast time spans. The Great Pyramid of Giza encodes mathematical relationships that suggest knowledge of Earth's dimensions, the speed of light, and other constants that weren't officially measured until modern times. Whether these relationships represent intentional encoding or remarkable coincidence remains a subject of intense debate. Indigenous traditions worldwide preserve astronomical knowledge that often proves more accurate than official historical accounts. Aboriginal Australians maintain oral traditions describing stellar positions and constellation movements that modern astronomy confirms as accurate for periods tens of thousands of years in the past. These traditions suggest that sophisticated astronomical observation has ancient roots in human culture, but they also raise questions about how such precision could be maintained across such vast time periods without written records or institutional continuity. If contact occurred between humans and non-terrestrial intelligence during prehistoric periods, astronomical knowledge would be a logical area for information sharing. Beings capable of interstellar travel would necessarily possess advanced understanding of celestial mechanics, navigation, and timekeeping. Sharing astronomical knowledge with early human civilizations would provide practical benefits, improved navigation, accurate calendars, and prediction of seasonal cycles. It would also demonstrate advanced capabilities without revealing technologies that might prove disruptive to normal cultural development. The sudden appearance of sophisticated astronomical knowledge in multiple ancient civilizations supports this interpretation. Babylonian astronomy, Maya mathematics, and Egyptian engineering all emerge with remarkable precision in their earliest historical appearances, suggesting access to knowledge sources beyond gradual cultural development. Modern satellite surveys have revealed that many ancient sites demonstrate astronomical alignments invisible from ground level. The Nazca lines in Peru, for example, include geometric patterns that align with stellar positions and seasonal cycles in ways that can only be fully appreciated from aerial perspectives. This aerial viewpoint raises intriguing questions about how ancient peoples designed such large-scale alignments without the ability to observe them from appropriate vantage points. Either they possessed surveying techniques beyond current historical understanding, or they received guidance from sources with access to aerial or orbital observation capabilities. The stars continue their ancient dance across the night sky, marking time and direction just as they did for our ancestors. Whether humanity learned to read their patterns through patient observation alone, or received guidance from visitors who traveled between those distant stars, the precision of ancient astronomical knowledge suggests that our species has always possessed connections to the cosmos that transcend our terrestrial origins. Across the vast landscapes of North and South America, indigenous peoples preserved traditions of contact with beings who descended from the star fields overhead. These accounts span thousands of years and dozens of distinct cultural groups, yet they share remarkable consistency in their descriptions of visitors from celestial realms. The Hopi people of the American Southwest maintain detailed oral histories about the Kashina's benevolent beings, who came from the stars to teach humanity essential knowledge before returning to their celestial home. According to Hopi tradition, the Kashinas shared agricultural techniques, astronomical knowledge, and spiritual wisdom that helped human communities survive and thrive. Hopi rock art depicts the Kashinas with distinctive characteristics: large circular heads, prominent eyes, and elaborate headdresses that often include radiating elements suggesting light or energy. These same iconographic features appear in petroglyphs across the Southwest, created by cultures separated by centuries and hundreds of miles. The consistency of Kashina imagery across different artistic traditions suggests either remarkable cultural diffusion or shared experiences with similar phenomena. If these images record actual encounters, they represent some of the oldest continuously preserved accounts of contact with non-human intelligence. Moving north to the Great Plains, the Lakota and other Plains tribes speak of star people who descended from the night sky to share knowledge and provide guidance during times of crisis. These beings were described as tall, luminous figures who traveled in vehicles that glowed like moving stars. Plains Indian traditions often link star people encounters to significant astronomical events, meteor showers, comet appearances, or unusual aurora displays. The timing suggests that celestial phenomena might have triggered or accompanied contact experiences, providing natural cover for visitation activities. In the Pacific Northwest, coastal tribes maintain traditions about beings who emerged from both the sea and the sky. The Quinault people describe visitors who arrived in glowing vessels that could travel through air and water with equal ease. These beings shared knowledge of navigation, fishing techniques, and weather prediction that proved essential for survival in the challenging maritime environment. The amphibious nature of these visitors echoes accounts from other parts of the world: the Awanas of Mesopotamia, the Namo of the Dogon people, and similar traditions from cultures that developed independently across vast distances and time periods. Farther south, the Inca and pre-Inca civilizations of the Andes preserved accounts of Viracocha and other sky beings who descended from the heavens to establish civilization. These visitors were described as tall, fair-skinned figures who possessed advanced knowledge of astronomy, agriculture, and engineering. The timing of these traditions correlates with the appearance of sophisticated astronomical knowledge in Andean civilizations. Inca astronomers achieved precision in tracking planetary cycles that rivals modern calculations. They built massive stone complexes with astronomical alignments that demonstrate understanding of celestial mechanics spanning thousands of years. Sacsayhuaman, a massive stone fortress overlooking Cusco, contains blocks weighing hundreds of tons fitted together with precision that modern engineers struggle to duplicate. The construction techniques required to move and position such massive stones remain mysterious, even with contemporary equipment and knowledge. If the Viracocha traditions preserve memories of actual contact, they suggest that advanced engineering knowledge was shared along with astronomical information. The technical achievements of pre-Columbian Andean civilizations become more comprehensible if viewed as products of knowledge transfer rather than independent development. In the Amazon basin, isolated tribes maintain traditions about sky beings who continue to visit remote forest regions. The Kayapo people of Brazil describe visitors who wear shining garments and travel in vehicles that make no sound as they move through the forest canopy. Contemporary researchers working with indigenous communities have documented accounts of ongoing encounters with luminous beings who appear during certain seasonal cycles or astronomical events. These reports suggest that contact experiences may have continued into modern times in regions where traditional cultures remain intact. The preservation of these traditions through oral transmission represents a remarkable achievement in cultural continuity. Stories told today in indigenous communities can often be traced back through verified genealogies of storytellers, spanning centuries or millennia. The stability of oral traditions in indigenous cultures contrasts sharply with the tendency of written histories to be modified, censored, or lost over time. Oral accounts must remain accurate to serve their function as cultural memory banks, creating strong selective pressure for faithful transmission of important information. If star being encounters occurred during humanity's formative periods, oral traditions would provide the most reliable preservation method for such memories. Written accounts could be altered or destroyed, but stories transmitted through countless generations of careful storytellers would maintain their essential accuracy across vast time spans. The geographical distribution of star being traditions follows interesting patterns. Accounts appear most frequently in regions with clear night skies, deserts, high plains, and mountain areas where stellar visibility reaches maximum clarity. These same regions often contain the highest concentrations of ancient astronomical sites and observatories. Modern UFO sighting reports show similar geographical clustering, with higher frequencies in areas of low light pollution and clear atmospheric conditions. If the same phenomena that generated ancient star being traditions continue today, we might expect this correlation between visibility conditions and encounter reports. The star beings of indigenous tradition offered knowledge that proved essential for human survival and cultural development. Whether viewed as literal visitors or powerful archetypal symbols, these accounts suggest that humanity's relationship with the cosmos has always transcended simple astronomical observation. The traditions continue to be told in indigenous communities across the Americas, carrying forward memories that may preserve humanity's earliest encounters with intelligence from beyond our world. Under the same star fields that guided ancient peoples, these stories maintain their vigil, waiting for the moment when their true significance becomes clear to those willing to listen. High in the Bayan Karo Yula Mountains of Tibet, where the air grows thin and the peaks scrape against the star-filled sky, Chinese archaeologists in 1938 allegedly made one of the most controversial discoveries in modern archaeology. In caves that had been sealed for thousands of years, they found a collection of stone discs unlike anything else in the archaeological record. The Dropa stones, as they came to be known, numbered 716 individual discs, each about 9 inches in diameter, with a hole in the center that gave them the appearance of ancient phonograph records. But these weren't simple decorative objects or primitive tools. Carved into the surface of each disc, spiraling from the center hole to the outer edge, were lines of incredibly small hieroglyphic symbols. The inscriptions were so minute that they could barely be read without magnification, suggesting a level of precision and patience that defied explanation for objects supposedly created by primitive mountain peoples. According to the controversial accounts that emerged decades later, Chinese linguist Dr. Sum Nui eventually deciphered the inscriptions in 1962. The translations allegedly revealed an extraordinary story. The discs contained the account of a group of beings whose aircraft had crashed in the mountains 12,000 years ago. The inscribed narrative supposedly described how these visitors, called the Dropa, were stranded after their vehicle was damaged beyond repair. They attempted to make contact with local human populations, but were initially met with hostility due to their unusual appearance. Eventually, some humans came to understand that the Dropa were peaceful and allowed them to settle in the mountain caves. The story continues with accounts of interbreeding between the Dropa and local populations, creating hybrid communities that preserve both human and non-human characteristics. Some descendants supposedly retain the elongated skulls and diminutive stature of their non-human ancestors. Mainstream archaeology has largely dismissed the Dropa stone accounts as hoaxes or misinterpretations. Critics point out that key figures in the story cannot be independently verified, that physical evidence for the discs remains elusive, and that the claims seem designed to support pre-existing beliefs about ancient astronauts rather than emerging from careful scholarly investigation. The controversy surrounding the Dropa stones reflects broader challenges in evaluating claims about anomalous archaeological discoveries. Extraordinary assertions require extraordinary evidence, but the standards for such evidence often become impossibly high when the implications challenge fundamental assumptions about human history. Yet consider the geographical context of the alleged discovery. The Himalayan region has consistently generated accounts of unusual phenomena and encounters with non-human beings. Tibetan Buddhist traditions include detailed descriptions of aerial vehicles and otherworldly visitors that predate modern UFO reports by centuries. The isolation of high mountain valleys creates ideal conditions for preserving both physical artifacts and cultural memories across vast time periods. Communities that remain cut off from outside influence can maintain traditions and preserve materials that would be lost or contaminated in more accessible locations. Recent genetic studies of populations in remote Himalayan regions have revealed unusual DNA sequences that do unmatch known human lineages. While mainstream science attributes these anomalies to ancient population bottlenecks and genetic drift, they could potentially support accounts of hybridization between human and non-human populations. The precision required to create the microscopic inscriptions allegedly found on the Dropa stones would demand advanced tools and extraordinary patience. If authentic, the discs would represent a technological achievement that seems incongruent with the supposed developmental level of 12,000-year-old mountain cultures. But this same precision appears in other anomalous artifacts from various time periods and geographical locations. The Antikythera mechanism, the precision-fitted stones of Sacsayhuaman, and the microscopic details in some ancient art all suggest access to technologies or techniques beyond conventional historical understanding. Whether the Dropa stones represent authentic artifacts, elaborate hoaxes, or something more complex, they highlight the challenges facing researchers who encounter evidence that doesn't fit established historical narratives. The tendency to dismiss anomalous discoveries without thorough investigation may protect scientific credibility, but it also risks overlooking genuine evidence for unexplained phenomena. The mountains of Tibet continue to guard their secrets in caves and valleys that remain largely unexplored by modern archaeology. If the Dropa stones were authentic, they would represent just one example of the extraordinary materials that might await discovery in the world as most remote and inaccessible regions. The story persists in the folklore of anomalous archaeology, carrying forward questions about what evidence might exist for contact between humans and non-terrestrial intelligence during our species' formative periods. Whether fact or fiction, the account of the Dropa stones serves as a reminder that the most extraordinary discoveries often come from the places where few researchers dare to look. In the thin air of the Himalayan heights, where the boundary between earth and sky seems to dissolve, ancient mysteries wait in caves carved from living rock. The truth about the Dropa stones may remain forever elusive, but the questions they raise about humanity's hidden history continue to echo through the mountain silence. Beneath the waves of every ocean, under the sands of every desert, lie the traces of civilizations that rose and fell before recorded history began. Atlantis captures the imagination most powerfully, but it represents just one name for something that appears in traditions worldwide advanced, societies that achieved remarkable heights before being destroyed by catastrophe. Plato's account of Atlantis, recorded in his dialogues Timaeus and Critias, describes a maritime civilization that possessed advanced technology, sophisticated architecture, and global influence before being destroyed in a single day and night of earthquakes and floods. He claimed the story was passed down through Egyptian priests who maintained records reaching back thousands of years. Most scholars treat Atlantis as philosophical allegory rather than historical account. But Plato was notably careful to distinguish between his philosophical constructions and his claims about historical events. He insisted repeatedly that the Atlantis story was factual, inherited from reliable ancient sources. If Atlantis represents garbled memories of actual civilizations rather than pure fiction, we must ask what level of advancement these lost societies might have achieved. Archaeological evidence suggests that human capabilities during prehistoric periods were far greater than previously assumed. Göbekli Tepe demonstrates sophisticated architectural and astronomical knowledge 11,000 years ago. The precision-fitted megalithic structures scattered across the globe suggest engineering capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of ancient technology. The accurate geographical knowledge preserved in ancient maps implies exploration and surveying activities that supposedly didn't occur until much later historical periods. But consider another possibility. What if the lost civilizations weren't entirely human? If contact occurred between humans and non-terrestrial intelligence during prehistoric periods, the resulting hybrid cultures might have achieved technological levels far beyond normal human development. These advanced societies would naturally leave traces in human memory as accounts of golden ages, divine kingdoms, and lost paradises. The destruction of such hybrid civilizations would explain both the survival of fragmentary traditions and the absence of comprehensive physical evidence. Catastrophic events that eliminated advanced settlements would scatter survivors into isolated communities where only partial memories of the original achievements could be preserved. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis provides a mechanism for such comprehensive destruction. Cosmic bombardment 12,900 years ago would have devastated coastal civilizations worldwide, while triggering climate changes that made advanced technologies unsustainable for centuries afterward. Hindu traditions preserve accounts of the Yuga's vast cosmic cycles during which human civilization rises and falls repeatedly. The descriptions of advanced technologies during previous cycles, flying vehicles, devastating weapons, global communication systems sound remarkably similar to modern capabilities. These texts describe wars between gods and demons fought with weapons that could destroy entire cities. aerial battles involving sophisticated vehicles, and global conflicts that ended previous world ages. If interpreted as garbled historical memories rather than pure mythology, they suggest that advanced technological civilizations existed and destroyed themselves in cycles of development and catastrophe. The Mahabharata contains descriptions of weapons that produce effects similar to nuclear explosions, brilliant flashes, mushroom clouds, radiation poisoning, and areas that remain uninhabitable for years afterward. While most scholars interpret these as poetic exaggeration, some researchers note their similarity to eyewitness accounts of atomic warfare. Archaeological investigations at sites mentioned in ancient Indian texts have occasionally yielded puzzling evidence. Layers of vitrified stone suggest exposure to extreme heat. Elevated radiation levels appear in some locations mentioned as battlefields in ancient sources. Skeletal remains show evidence of sudden death by unknown causes. Indigenous traditions throughout the Americas describe previous worlds that ended in catastrophe, often involving destruction from the sky. These accounts typically include references to advanced societies that possessed knowledge and technologies later lost to human memory. The Hopi describe 4 previous worlds, each ending in destruction when humanity forgot spiritual principles and became too focused on material technology. The descriptions of the 4th world include flying vehicles, global communication, and advanced engineering, all of which were destroyed in a great flood and cosmic catastrophe. Australian Aboriginal traditions speak of previous creation periods, when the rainbow serpent and other ancestral beings shared advanced knowledge with humanity before withdrawing to hidden realms. The rock art from these periods includes technological imagery that doesn't match the supposed developmental level of hunter-gatherer societies. If these traditions preserve memories of actual advanced civilizations, the question becomes whether such societies developed through purely human achievement or through contact with non-terrestrial intelligence. A sudden appearance of sophisticated knowledge, the accounts of beings from the sky, and the descriptions of technologies beyond normal human development all suggest external influence. The pattern repeats globally. Accounts of golden ages when gods walked among humans, sharing knowledge that elevated civilization to remarkable heights. These periods inevitably end in catastrophe, war, or the departure of the divine teachers, leaving humanity to preserve what memories it can through oral tradition and symbolic representation. Modern civilization may itself represent a rediscovery phase rather than humanity's first achievement of advanced technology. Archaeological evidence suggests that we're not the first human culture to develop metallurgy, astronomy, and complex social organization. We may simply be the first to do so with written records intact. The implications extend beyond historical curiosity. If advanced civilizations rose and fell repeatedly throughout human history, if these achievements involved contact with non-terrestrial intelligence, then our current technological development might be following patterns established long ago. Perhaps the visitors who allegedly influenced ancient civilizations never truly departed. Perhaps they continue to observe and occasionally guide human development, waiting for us to rediscover capabilities that our species has achieved before but lost to catastrophe and time. In the depths of the ocean, under layers of sediment and volcanic ash, the traces of lost worlds wait for rediscovery. Whether purely human achievements or products of cosmic contact, these civilizations left their mark in myth, monument, and collective memory. Their story continues in our own achievements, our own struggles, and our own attempts to touch the stars that once guided more ancient dreamers toward wisdom and catastrophe in equal measure. Deep in the painted caves of France and Spain, where Paleolithic artists created humanity's first great galleries, shadows dance across images that have puzzled researchers for generations. In the flickering light of oil lamps and torches, the same illumination that guided ancient artists, certain paintings seem to move and shift, revealing details that daylight and electric bulbs cannot capture. The cave art of Lascaux, Altamira, and chauve represents sophisticated artistic achievement dating back 30,000 years or more. The animals painted on these walls display anatomical accuracy, perspective, and artistic sophistication that rivals work from much later periods. The artists clearly possessed advanced observational skills and technical capabilities. But among the magnificent bulls, horses, and bison appear images that don't fit comfortable interpretations. Abstract symbols hover above hunting scenes. Geometric patterns suggest technological rather than natural phenomena. Human figures appear with unusual proportions or mysterious appendages that resist easy classification. At Lascaux, painted around 17,000 years ago, researchers have cataloged over 600 animals and nearly 1,500 abstract symbols. Many of the symbols appear in groupings that suggest systematic organization rather than random decoration. Dots, lines, and geometric shapes are positioned with apparent intention and meaning. Some researchers interpret these abstract elements as shamanic symbols, representations of altered consciousness experiences, or early astronomical observations. But examine them more closely under the lighting conditions the original artists used, and other possibilities emerge. In the Hall of Bulls at Lascaux, circular symbols with radiating lines appear above the painted animals. These forms don't match any known natural phenomena that Paleolithic peoples would have observed. They suggest light sources or energy manifestations that don't correspond to the sun, moon, or stars. The positioning is particularly significant. The circular symbols occupy the sky space above ground-level activity, as if the artists were recording aerial phenomena that accompanied or observed terrestrial events. The careful placement suggests intentional documentation rather than decorative abstraction. At Altamira in Spain, painted around 14,000 years ago, human figures appear with unusual head coverings or appendages that do and match known cultural practices of Paleolithic peoples. Some figures seem to wear helmets or halos of radiating lines. Others display elongated limbs or disproportionate features that suggest non-human characteristics. Traditional interpretation views these as shamanic, transformation spiritual practitioners, adopting animal or supernatural characteristics during ritual activities. But the consistency of certain features across different sites and time periods suggests the artists might have been recording encounters with actual beings rather than symbolic transformations. The Trois Frères cave in France contains the famous sorcerer, figure a human form with antlers, owl eyes, and other mixed characteristics. But it also contains less well-known images of figures that appear to hover or float above the ground, surrounded by dots or lines that suggest energy fields or atmospheric disturbance. These floating figures don't match typical shamanic imagery from other cultures. They suggest observation from aerial perspectives or encounters with beings capable of flight or levitation. The artistic precision used to render them indicates careful observation of specific phenomena rather than imaginative speculation. Recent analysis using modern lighting techniques has revealed previously unknown details in many Paleolithic cave paintings. Images that appear static under electric illumination show movement and animation when viewed under flickering flame light. The artists clearly designed their work to be experienced under specific viewing conditions that enhanced the sense of life and movement. This suggests that the abstract symbols and unusual figures might also reveal additional details under proper lighting conditions. Elements that seem randomly placed under modern illumination might form coherent patterns or sequences when viewed as the original artists intended. Three-dimensional computer modeling of cave spaces has revealed that many painting locations were chosen for their acoustic properties. Sounds made at certain positions within the caves create unusual echoing and resonance effects. The painted areas often coincide with locations where sound phenomena occur. If Paleolithic peoples were documenting encounters with unknown phenomena, they might have chosen locations where acoustic effects accompanied visual experiences. Caves that enhanced both sight and sound would be logical places to preserve records of extraordinary encounters. The pigments used in Paleolithic cave art required sophisticated preparation techniques. Creating lasting colors that could adhere to stone surfaces demanded knowledge of chemistry, geology, and materials science. The artists possessed technical capabilities that extend beyond simple hunting and gathering societies. This technical sophistication extends to their observational and recording capabilities. If they were documenting encounters with aerial phenomena or non-human beings, they had both the skill and motivation to create accurate records. The consistency of certain imagery across vast distances and time periods suggests systematic documentation rather than random imagination. Modern attempts to replicate Paleolithic painting techniques under original lighting conditions have revealed the extraordinary skill required to create these images. Working by flickering flame light, using primitive tools and self-prepared pigments, the artists achieved precision that challenges contemporary artists working under ideal conditions. The dedication required to create such sophisticated art in difficult cave environments suggests that the subject matter held profound importance for Paleolithic communities. Whether recording spiritual experiences, historical events, or encounters with unknown phenomena, the paintings represent humanity's earliest attempts to preserve critical information for future generations. The caves continue to reveal their secrets gradually as new analytical techniques become available. High-resolution imaging, spectroscopic analysis, and three-dimensional modeling are uncovering details invisible to previous generations of researchers. Each new discovery adds complexity to our understanding of what Paleolithic artists experienced and felt compelled to record. In the deep caves where our ancestors worked by firelight, their painted visions wait in eternal shadow and flame. Whether documenting shamanic journeys, astronomical observations, or encounters with visitors from beyond our world, these images preserve humanity's earliest attempts to capture the extraordinary in pigment and stone. The shadows still dance across their work, keeping alive questions that echo through 30 millennia of human wonder and mystery. The assumption underlying most discussions of ancient UFO contact involves beings from other star systems traveling vast interstellar distances to reach Earth. But what if this fundamental assumption misses more exotic possibilities? What if the intelligences our ancestors encountered weren't extraterrestrial visitors at all, but something far stranger and closer to home? Consider the possibility that UFO phenomena represent interdimensional rather than interstellar contact. Modern physics suggests that reality consists of more dimensions than the three spatial coordinates and single time dimension we normally perceive. String theory proposes additional dimensions curled up at subatomic scales, while other theoretical frameworks suggest parallel realities that coexist alongside our own. If consciousness itself operates through mechanisms that transcend three-dimensional space, beings capable of manipulating dimensional boundaries might appear and disappear in ways that seem to violate physical laws. They wouldn't need spacecraft in the conventional sense. They would access our reality directly through dimensional manipulation. This interdimensional hypothesis explains several puzzling aspects of UFO encounters throughout history. The ability of objects to appear and vanish instantaneously. The way encounters often seem more dreamlike than physical, with witnesses reporting altered states of consciousness. The tendency for phenomena to interact with human perception and belief systems in ways that suggest consciousness-based rather than purely technological contact. Ancient shamanic traditions worldwide describe contact with beings from other worlds that exist parallel to our own. These entities appear during altered states of consciousness, often in natural settings that serve as dimensional gateways, caves, mountain peaks, bodies of water, or other locations where the boundary between realities becomes permeable. If shamanic contact represents the same phenomena recorded in UFO encounters, then human interaction with interdimensional intelligence stretches back to our species' earliest spiritual traditions. The consistency of contact experiences across cultures and time periods suggests ongoing relationships rather than sporadic visits from distant civilizations. Another exotic possibility involves time travel rather than space travel. If technological civilizations eventually develop the ability to manipulate time, they might visit their own past to observe or influence earlier developmental stages. The beings encountered by ancient peoples could represent future humans returning to study or guide their ancestors. This temporal hypothesis explains the apparent interest UFO intelligences show in human development and survival. Future humans would have obvious motivation to ensure that crucial events in their species' history unfold successfully. They might intervene during extinction events, share knowledge during developmental bottlenecks, or provide guidance during critical transitions. The physical descriptions of UFO entities often include features that could represent evolutionary adaptations of human physiology. Large heads suggesting enhanced brain capacity, elongated limbs adapted to reduced gravity or different atmospheric conditions, pale skin reflecting reduced solar exposure. These characteristics might represent humanity's own distant future rather than alien biology. Time travel contact would also explain the gradual nature of technological revelation throughout human history. Instead of overwhelming ancient peoples with incomprehensible technologies, future humans might carefully introduce innovations at rates that emerging civilizations can absorb and integrate successfully. The archaeological record shows repeated patterns of sudden technological advancement followed by periods of gradual refinement. Agriculture, metallurgy, writing, and other crucial innovations appear relatively quickly across multiple civilizations, often with remarkable similarity in their fundamental approaches. This pattern could reflect systematic guidance from future human visitors familiar with successful developmental pathways. Quantum mechanics suggests even more exotic possibilities. The observer effect demonstrates that consciousness plays a fundamental role in determining physical reality at quantum scales. If consciousness can influence material phenomena directly, sufficiently advanced intelligences might manipulate reality through consciousness-based technologies that transcend conventional physics. Such beings wouldn't necessarily require physical vehicles or technological devices in any sense we would recognize. They might appear as manifestations of pure consciousness, interacting directly with human perception and memory. Their craft could represent temporary materializations rather than constructed vehicles. This consciousness-based hypothesis aligns with ancient descriptions of gods and spirits who could assume physical form when interacting with humans but normally existed in non-material states. The shape-shifting abilities attributed to many mythological beings might reflect their nature as consciousness entities capable of manifesting in whatever form proved most effective for communication. Indigenous traditions often emphasize that contact with otherworldly beings requires altered states of consciousness on the part of human participants. Shamanic practices, vision quests, and other spiritual techniques serve as preparation for encountering intelligences that exist beyond normal sensory perception. If consciousness itself serves as the medium for contact, then the decline of shamanic traditions in technological civilizations might explain the apparent reduction in contact experiences during certain historical periods. As humans became more focused on material technologies, they might have lost access to consciousness-based communication methods. The resurgence of UFO encounters in the modern era could reflect humanity's renewed readiness for contact as we approach our own technological maturity. If we're being prepared for eventual membership in a cosmic community of conscious intelligences, the timing of increased contact might correlate with our species' approaching readiness for broader participation. Whether interdimensional, temporal, or consciousness-based, these alternative explanations for UFO phenomena suggest that reality itself might be far stranger and more interconnected than conventional science assumes. The intelligences encountered by ancient peoples might represent aspects of existence that transcend simple categories like terrestrial versus extraterrestrial. The true nature of these encounters may involve relationships between different forms of consciousness that share the same cosmic space while operating according to different physical and temporal rules. Ancient peoples, future humans, interdimensional beings, and consciousness entities might all represent facets of the same underlying reality, a universe where intelligence takes forms that stretch beyond the boundaries of any single world or time period. In the vast landscape of possibility that modern physics has revealed, the question isn't whether we are alone, but rather how many different kinds of intelligence share the cosmic dance of existence. The visitors recorded in ancient art and oral tradition might not be visitors at all, but fellow voyagers on a journey through space, time, and consciousness that encompasses scales of reality we're only beginning to imagine. Around 200,000 years ago, something remarkable happened in the evolutionary history of Homo sapiens. Our species emerged from Africa with a brain capacity that had nearly tripled in size over the preceding few million years. This rapid increase in cranial volume represents one of the fastest evolutionary changes ever documented in the fossil record. The conventional explanation involves environmental pressures that favored increased intelligence, climate change, predator pressure, social competition, and the advantages of tool use and language. Random genetic mutations enhanced cognitive abilities, and natural selection propagated these improvements through successive generations. But the speed of human brain evolution puzzles many researchers. Typical evolutionary changes occur gradually over millions of years, yet human cranial capacity expanded dramatically in what amounts to an evolutionary instant. The rate of change seems almost too rapid for conventional evolutionary mechanisms to explain. More mysteriously, the human brain appears to possess capabilities that far exceed the survival requirements that supposedly drove its evolution. Our mathematical abilities, artistic sensibilities, and capacity for abstract thought extend well beyond what hunter-gatherer survival would demand. Why would natural selection produce brains capable of composing symphonies, proving mathematical theorems, and contemplating the cosmos? These abilities provide no obvious reproductive advantages in Paleolithic environments. Yet they emerged as standard features of human cognition across all populations and cultures. Modern genetic analysis has revealed additional puzzles about human origins. The human genome shows evidence of rapid changes that don't match the gradual accumulation of random mutations expected from standard evolutionary processes. Some genetic sequences appear to have been inserted rather than evolved, suggesting outside influences on human DNA development. Particularly intriguing is the discovery of genetic sequences in humans that don't appear in our closest primate relatives. These unique elements include genes involved in brain development, language capabilities, and immune system function. Their sudden appearance in the human lineage suggests either remarkable evolutionary coincidence or external genetic influence. The FOXP2 gene, crucial for language development, shows characteristics that distinguish humans from all other species. The specific mutations that enable complex speech appear to have occurred recently in evolutionary terms, and they provide advantages that seem disproportionate to their relatively minor genetic changes. Archaeological evidence suggests that symbolic behavior art, music, complex tool-making, and spiritual practices appeared suddenly around 50,000 years ago. This great leap forward in human cognitive capabilities coincides with the rapid global expansion of our species and the development of sophisticated technologies. The timing suggests a cognitive revolution that enabled humans to transcend biological limitations through cultural innovation. But what triggered this sudden enhancement of mental capabilities? Standard evolutionary theory struggles to explain such rapid behavioral changes without corresponding genetic modifications. Some researchers propose that human cognitive evolution involved genetic mechanisms beyond random mutation and natural selection. Horizontal gene transfer, viral-mediated genetic insertion, or other non-standard processes might have accelerated the development of enhanced brain functions. These alternative mechanisms could potentially explain how humans acquired cognitive capabilities that seem disproportionate to survival needs. If external genetic material was introduced into human DNA, it might have carried information encoding enhanced neural development and mental abilities. The ancient Sumerian texts describe the Anunnaki beings who allegedly modified human genetics to create workers with enhanced intelligence. While mainstream scholarship interprets these accounts as mythology, they describe genetic manipulation techniques that sound remarkably similar to modern biotechnology. According to these texts, the Anunnaki combined their own genetic material with existing human DNA to produce hybrid beings with enhanced capabilities. The resulting humans possessed greater intelligence, longevity, and physical abilities than their unmodified predecessors. Similar accounts appear in other ancient sources. The Book of Enoch describes the Watcher's angelic beings who went into human women and produced hybrid offspring with unusual characteristics. These Nephilim possessed extraordinary size, strength, and mental abilities that distinguished them from normal humans. Hindu texts describe avatar divine beings who incarnated in human form by manipulating genetic mechanisms. These incarnations could access capabilities beyond normal human limitations while maintaining physical bodies that appeared essentially human. If these accounts preserve memories of actual genetic modification rather than purely mythological concepts, they suggest that human cognitive enhancement involved external intervention by beings with advanced biotechnology. The rapid evolution of human intelligence becomes explicable if it resulted from deliberate genetic engineering rather than random evolutionary processes. Modern genetic research has made such intervention theoretically possible. CRISPR and other gene editing technologies allow precise modification of DNA sequences. Advanced civilizations could potentially enhance cognitive abilities, extend lifespans, or improve physical capabilities through targeted genetic alterations. The ethical implications of such modification remain controversial, even in contemporary discussions. Ancient texts suggest that genetic enhancement created problems as well as benefits hybrid beings who are too powerful for existing social structures, conflicts between modified and unmodified populations, and eventual catastrophes that required divine intervention to resolve. Perhaps the most intriguing aspect of human genetic anomalies involves so-called junk DNA genetic sequences that don't appear to code for specific proteins or cellular functions. Recent research suggests that much of this supposedly useless DNA actually serves regulatory and developmental functions that weren't previously understood. Some researchers speculate that dormant genetic sequences might contain information that could be activated under specific conditions. If human DNA includes genetic material from external sources, portions of it might remain inactive until triggered by environmental factors, technological development, or other influences. The possibility of genetic activation explains accounts of sudden enhancement in mental abilities, psychic phenomena, or other capabilities that appear sporadically in human populations. Rather than representing new mutations, these abilities might reflect the activation of genetic potentials already present in human DNA. Contemporary reports of individuals with extraordinary mental capabilities, mathematical savants, psychic phenomena, or enhanced memory abilities might represent natural activation of dormant genetic sequences. As human technology approaches levels that could trigger these capabilities artificially, we might be approaching a new phase of conscious evolution. The genetic puzzle of human origins remains unresolved. Whether our enhanced cognitive abilities resulted from conventional evolution, external genetic modification, or some combination of natural and artificial processes, the evidence suggests that human intelligence represents something unprecedented in terrestrial biology. Perhaps we carry within our DNA the legacy of ancient contact genetic gifts from visitors who recognized our species, potential and provided the biological foundation for eventual cosmic citizenship. The rapid evolution of human consciousness might represent not just adaptation to terrestrial challenges, but preparation for eventual participation in galactic intelligence. In the remote Qinghai province of western China, where the Tibetan Plateau meets the ancient Silk Road, stand three mysterious structures that challenge conventional understanding of natural geological processes. The Beigong pipes appear to be sophisticated technological installations embedded in rock formations that are supposedly millions of years old. The structures consist of three caves carved into Mount Beigong near Qinghai Lake. Two of the caves have collapsed, but the remaining cavity contains dozens of metallic pipes that extend from the cave walls into the surrounding rock. Additional pipes protrude from the nearby lakeshore and continue beneath the water's surface. The pipes range in diameter from toothpick thin to several inches across. They run straight through solid rock for distances of up to several hundred feet, maintaining precise circular cross-sections and smooth interior surfaces. Some pipes show evidence of sophisticated manufacturing techniques, including uniform wall thickness and complex internal structures. Chemical analysis reveals that the pipes contain materials not typically found in natural mineral formations. The metal composition includes iron, silicon dioxide, and calcium oxide, along with trace elements that don't match local geological patterns. Most mysteriously, some pipes contain materials that shouldn't exist in natural formations of such age. Conventional explanations attribute the Beigong pipes to unusual geological processes, perhaps fossilized tree roots that were replaced by minerals over millions of years. But this theory struggles to explain the precise circular geometries, the complex branching patterns, and the presence of manufactured materials within supposedly natural formations. The pipe's positioning suggests systematic installation rather than random natural formation. They appear to follow logical patterns that would be consistent with technological infrastructure parallel runs, perpendicular junctions, and connections between different cave systems. The arrangement resembles plumbing or electrical conduit systems more than fossilized organic matter. Local Tibetan traditions describe the area as an ancient landing place for vehicles from the sky. According to these accounts, beings from the stars established an outpost near Qinghai Lake thousands of years ago, using the caves as storage and operation centers before departing back to the heavens. The timing suggested by local traditions correlates roughly with the period when advanced civilizations were emerging elsewhere in China. If the pipes represent technological installations rather than natural formations, they might provide evidence for contact between ancient Chinese populations and visitors possessing advanced manufacturing capabilities. Half a world away in California's Death Valley, another geological mystery creates similar puzzles about the intersection of natural processes and possible technological intervention. The racetrack playa features massive stones that move across the flat desert floor, leaving perfectly straight trails that extend for hundreds of yards. The moving stones range from small rocks to massive boulders weighing hundreds of pounds. They travel in straight lines or gentle curves, sometimes making precise 90-degree turns while maintaining consistent speed and direction. The trails appear suddenly after certain weather conditions, with no witnesses ever observing the actual movement. Scientific investigation has proposed various natural mechanisms to explain the phenomenon. Wind, ice formation, underground seismic activity, and combinations of weather factors have all been suggested as possible causes for stone movement. Recent research using GPS tracking has documented some movement during specific atmospheric conditions. But many trails show characteristics that resist explanation through known natural processes. The perfectly straight trajectories, the synchronized movement of multiple stones, and the ability to change direction while maintaining momentum suggest forces beyond simple wind or water action. Indigenous traditions from the Death Valley region describe the area as a place where sky spirits conduct mysterious activities during certain seasonal cycles. These accounts suggest that stone movement represents ongoing technological processes rather than purely natural phenomena. Similar unexplained geological features appear in locations worldwide. In Romania, the trovents are spherical stones that appear to grow, reproduce, and move independently. In Costa Rica, perfectly spherical granite balls weighing several tons appear in precise geometric arrangements, despite being carved from quarries located hundreds of miles away. The global distribution of such anomalous geological features suggests either extremely unusual coincidences of natural processes or evidence for technological activities that transcend conventional historical understanding. If ancient or ongoing contact involves beings with advanced material science, we might expect to find traces of their activities in the form of modified geological structures. The persistence of these features across vast time periods indicates that whatever processes created them involved durable materials and stable technologies. Natural weathering and erosion should have eliminated most traces of ancient technological activities. Yet these installations continue to function or maintain their integrity thousands of years after their creation. Modern analysis using advanced materials science and geological survey techniques continues to reveal new details about these mysterious structures. Ground-penetrating radar, chemical spectroscopy, and other investigative methods are uncovering evidence that challenges initial assumptions about their origins and composition. Whether products of unknown natural processes or evidence for advanced technological intervention, these wandering stones and mysterious pipes represent puzzles that extend beyond conventional geological science. They suggest that Earth's surface preserves records of activities that don't fit comfortable categories of human or natural phenomena. In the remote locations where these mysteries persist, high mountain plateaus, isolated deserts, and other places where human activity remains minimal, the evidence waits for investigators, willing to consider possibilities beyond standard scientific frameworks. The stones continue their mysterious movements, the pipes maintain their precise geometries, and the questions they raise grow more intriguing as our analytical capabilities improve. Perhaps they represent the technological signature of visitors who possessed materials science beyond our current understanding. Perhaps they read products of natural processes so unusual that we haven't yet developed theories to explain them. Or perhaps they mark locations where the boundary between natural and artificial phenomena becomes meaningless in the face of intelligence that transcends our current categories of understanding. Across the landscapes of Europe, from the windswept coasts of Scotland to the sun-baked hills of Malta, massive stone structures rise from the earth like ancient prayers carved in granite. These megalithic monuments represent humanity's first great architectural achievements, built with precision and astronomical knowledge that challenges our understanding of Neolithic capabilities. Stonehenge remains the most famous of these stone circles, but it represents just one example of a megalithic tradition that spanned thousands of years and countless miles. Over 1,000 stone circles dot the British Isles alone, while similar structures appear across continental Europe, suggesting a shared architectural and astronomical tradition of remarkable sophistication. The precision of these monuments astounds modern engineers. At Stonehenge, massive trilithons, paired vertical stones topped by horizontal lintels, are positioned to frame specific astronomical events with accuracy measured in fractions of degrees. The heel stone aligns perfectly with the sunrise on the summer solstice, while other structural elements mark lunar standstills, equinoxes, and complex planetary cycles. This astronomical precision required observation periods spanning centuries or millennia. Tracking the 18.6-year lunar standstill cycle accurately demands multiple generations of careful measurement. Calculating precession, the slow wobble of Earth's axis that shifts star positions over thousands of years, requires mathematical sophistication that conventional history associates with much later civilizations. Yet the astronomical alignments appear in the earliest phases of megalithic construction. Newgrange in Ireland, built around 3200 BCE, contains a roof box precisely positioned to allow sunlight to illuminate the inner chamber only during the winter solstice. The accuracy of this alignment has remained perfect for over 5,000 years, despite Earth's subtle changes in orbital mechanics. The engineering challenges of megalithic construction rival the astronomical precision. The largest stones at Stonehenge weigh over 40 tons and were transported from quarries located 150 miles away. Moving such massive blocks across the landscape required organizational capabilities, mechanical knowledge, and workforce coordination that supposedly didn't exist in Neolithic societies. Recent archaeological research has revealed that many megalithic sites contain acoustic properties that enhance sound transmission and create unusual resonance effects. The stone chambers at Newgrange amplify certain frequencies while filtering out others, creating acoustic environments that would have enhanced ritual activities or communication systems. These acoustic properties were accidental byproducts of construction. They were designed features that required understanding of sound physics and architectural acoustics. The builders possessed knowledge that modern acoustic engineers struggle to replicate even with sophisticated computer modeling and electronic measurement tools. The global distribution of megalithic traditions suggests either remarkable cultural diffusion or shared knowledge sources that transcended individual civilizations. Similar astronomical alignments, construction techniques, and acoustic properties appear in monuments separated by thousands of miles and hundreds of years, implying common underlying principles. In France, the Carnac stone rows consist of over 3,000 megalithic standing stones arranged in precise geometric patterns that extend for miles across the Breton landscape. The alignments incorporate complex mathematical relationships and astronomical orientations that suggest systematic planning rather than random ceremonial placement. The sheer scale of projects like Carnac implies organizational capabilities that challenge conventional understanding of Neolithic social structures. Coordinating the placement of thousands of massive stones according to precise geometric principles requires mathematical knowledge, surveying techniques, and administrative systems that supposedly weren't developed until the emergence of urban civilizations. Malta's megalithic temples predate Stonehenge by over 1,000 years, yet they demonstrate even more sophisticated architectural and astronomical knowledge. The Qajar Kim complex contains chambers precisely oriented to track multiple stellar and solar cycles simultaneously, while incorporating acoustic properties that create specific sound environments within different temple sections. The temple builders possessed advanced understanding of geometry, astronomy, and acoustics that they integrated into unified architectural systems. These weren't primitive ceremonial sites, they were sophisticated technological installations that served purposes we can only partially comprehend with modern analytical methods. Recent discoveries using ground-penetrating radar and other non-invasive survey techniques have revealed that many megalithic sites contain buried structures and underground chambers that extend far beyond the visible surface monuments. Stonehenge appears to be just the central element of a vast underground complex that includes tunnel systems, hidden chambers, and additional stone circles. This hidden architecture suggests that the visible monuments represent only a fraction of the original megalithic installations. If the underground components serve technological functions, power generation, communication systems, or astronomical computation devices, the surface stone circles might have been markers or interface points for much more complex buried technologies. Indigenous traditions associated with megalithic sites consistently describe them as places where sky beings or star people shared knowledge with early human populations. These accounts suggest that the astronomical precision and engineering sophistication of megalithic monuments resulted from contact with intelligences possessing advanced technological capabilities. The Breton legends associated with Karnak describe beings who descended from the sky to teach stoneworking, astronomy, and mathematics to local populations. These visitors allegedly shared knowledge of celestial mechanics and provided guidance for positioning the massive stone alignments according to cosmic principles. Similar traditions surround megalithic sites throughout Europe. The builders are consistently described as possessing knowledge beyond normal human capabilities, often with the assistance or guidance of otherworldly teachers who provided technical expertise and astronomical information. Modern attempts to reconstruct megalithic construction techniques using period-appropriate tools and methods have revealed the extraordinary precision and skill required for such projects. Even with contemporary knowledge of physics, engineering, and astronomy, replicating megalithic achievements proves extremely challenging. The implications are profound. Either Neolithic peoples possessed technological and scientific capabilities far beyond conventional historical understanding, or they received guidance from sources with access to advanced knowledge. The astronomical precision, engineering sophistication, and mathematical relationships embedded in megalithic monuments suggest influences that transcend the developmental level of hunter-gatherer societies. The stone circles continue to mark celestial events with the same precision their builders achieved thousands of years ago. Whether monuments to human achievement or products of cosmic contact, they preserve in granite and basalt a record of knowledge that challenges our understanding of humanity's relationship with the stars. Standing among the ancient stones as sunrise illuminates alignments perfected millennia ago, visitors experience connections to cosmic cycles that transcend individual human lifespans. The megaliths remember what their builders knew, that Earth participates in celestial dances that extend far beyond our small planet's surface, connecting us to patterns of intelligence and purpose that encompass the entire cosmos. In the pantheon of every ancient civilization, beings descend from the heavens wielding technologies that surpass human understanding. Zeus hurls thunderbolts from the sky. Indra commands a flying chariot that travels between worlds. Quetzalcoatl arrives on a feathered serpent that soars through the air. These divine figures share remarkably consistent characteristics despite emerging from cultures separated by vast distances and time periods. The sky gods possess several universal attributes. They travel in aerial vehicles, control advanced technologies, demonstrate superior knowledge of astronomy and engineering, and maintain their primary residences in celestial realms rather than earthly locations. They interact with humans periodically, but always return to the sky when their missions are complete. Traditional religious interpretation views these beings as purely mythological symbolic representations of natural forces, psychological archetypes, or spiritual concepts clothed in anthropomorphic imagery. The similarities between different cultural traditions reflect universal human, psychological patterns rather than shared historical experiences. But consider the alternative. What if these myths preserve cultural memories of actual encounters with technologically advanced beings who visited Earth during humanity's formative periods? The consistency of sky god characteristics across isolated cultures might reflect common experiences rather than parallel psychological development. The Greek Olympians possessed detailed technological capabilities that sound remarkably similar to modern scientific achievements. Zeus's thunderbolts behave like directed energy weapons. Hermes' winged sandals provide personal flight capability. Hephaestus operates automated workshops with robotic assistance. These aren't vague magical powers. They're specific technologies described with consistent operational details. Hindu texts provide even more precise technological descriptions. The Vimanas are flying vehicles with detailed specifications for construction, operation, and maintenance. The texts describe propulsion systems, navigation methods, weapon systems, and defensive capabilities that correspond closely to modern aerospace engineering concepts. The Mahabharata contains accounts of aerial battles involving sophisticated weapons and vehicles that could travel through air, space, and underwater environments. The descriptions include technical details about pilot training, vehicle maintenance, and strategic deployment that suggest actual technological knowledge rather than pure imagination. Norse mythology describes the Bifrost, a rainbow bridge that connects different worlds and allows rapid transportation between them. This concept parallels modern theoretical physics discussions of wormholes, dimensional gateways, and other exotic transportation methods that could connect distant locations through space-time manipulation. The consistency extends to physical descriptions of the sky gods themselves. They're typically portrayed as human-like, but with enhanced capabilities, greater size, extended lifespans, and knowledge that encompasses multiple scientific disciplines. They often wear distinctive clothing or equipment that provides them with special abilities or protection. These physical characteristics might reflect actual observations of beings adapted to different environmental conditions. Visitors from lower gravity worlds might appear taller and more robust than terrestrial humans. Advanced life support systems could provide enhanced physical capabilities. Protective equipment might appear as magical armor or divine regalia to observers unfamiliar with such technologies. The behavioral patterns of sky gods also show remarkable consistency across cultures. They establish contact with human populations during critical developmental periods. They share knowledge that accelerates cultural advancement. They mate with humans, producing hybrid offspring with unusual characteristics. Then they withdraw to celestial realms, maintaining occasional contact, but no longer living among human populations. This behavioral pattern matches what we might expect from a systematic contact program conducted by advanced intelligences. Initial contact during vulnerable developmental phases would provide maximum influence with minimal cultural disruption. Knowledge transfer would focus on essential survival and advancement technologies. Genetic hybridization might be intended to enhance human capabilities or establish ongoing biological connections. The timing of sky god interventions correlates with major transitions in human development. Agricultural development, metallurgy, writing systems, and astronomical knowledge often appear suddenly in civilizations that maintain traditions of divine instruction. The technological leaps coincide with periods when sky gods were allegedly active in human affairs. Archaeological evidence supports these correlations. Sophisticated achievements appear in the historical record with minimal developmental sequences, as if the necessary knowledge was introduced from external sources rather than developed gradually through internal innovation. The precision of ancient astronomical knowledge, the accuracy of early metallurgy, and the sophistication of initial architectural achievements all suggest access to information beyond what gradual cultural development should have provided. The departure of sky gods from active involvement in human affairs might reflect our species' gradual achievement of technological independence. As human civilizations developed their own scientific and engineering capabilities, direct intervention became less necessary. The gods withdrew to observational roles, intervening only during major crises or developmental transitions. This interpretation explains the apparent decline of miraculous events and divine manifestations in more recent historical periods. As human technology advanced, the technological gap between terrestrial and celestial capabilities narrowed, making divine interventions less necessary and more potentially disruptive to natural cultural development. Contemporary UFO encounters might represent continuation of the same contact program that generated ancient sky god traditions. The beings described in modern reports often display characteristics similar to those attributed to ancient divine visitors' advanced technologies, superior knowledge, and apparent interest in human development and survival. The shift from religious to technological interpretation of these encounters reflects changes in human cultural frameworks rather than changes in the nature of the phenomena themselves. Ancient peoples interpreted advanced technologies in terms of magic and divinity. Modern witnesses describe the same capabilities using scientific and technological terminology. Whether mythological archetypes or historical memories, sky god traditions preserve humanity's recognition that our development has been influenced by intelligences possessing capabilities beyond terrestrial achievement. These stories suggest that consciousness, intelligence, and technological capability extend far beyond the boundaries of our single world. The ancient myths continue to resonate in contemporary culture precisely because they address fundamental questions about humanity's the cosmos. Whether the sky gods return as divine beings or space travelers, their archetypal presence in human consciousness suggests that we retain collective memories of contact with intelligence that transcends our earthly limitations. In the vast cathedral of the night sky, where our ancestors first glimpsed the homes of gods, the same stars wheel overhead that witnessed the first meetings between terrestrial and celestial intelligence. The myths remember what history has forgotten, that humanity's greatest teachers may have descended from realms far beyond the blue dome of our familiar sky. The sudden appearance of complex technologies throughout human history poses persistent puzzles for scholars who study cultural development. Agriculture emerges simultaneously across multiple continents without apparent contact between regions. Metallurgy appears with sophisticated techniques that suggest long experimental traditions. Yet no evidence exists for the gradual development phases such traditions would require. Writing systems develop with remarkable complexity in their earliest appearances. Sumerian cuneiform includes advanced mathematical notation and astronomical calculations from its first preserved examples. Egyptian hieroglyphs demonstrate grammatical sophistication that typically requires centuries of linguistic evolution. These systems appear essentially complete, rather than showing gradual development from simpler precursors. The conventional explanation involves parallel inventions, similar environmental pressures, and human cognitive capabilities naturally leading to similar solutions across different cultures. Human ingenuity, combined with population growth and resource pressures, drove the development of agriculture, metallurgy, and other essential technologies. But examine the timing and sophistication of these achievements more closely, and patterns emerge that challenge purely independent development. The technologies appear during narrow time windows following major climate changes or catastrophic events. They demonstrate precision and complexity that suggest access to knowledge beyond what trial and error experimentation would logically produce. Consider agricultural development following the Younger Dryas period. Within a few thousand years of climate stabilization, human populations worldwide began domesticating plants and animals, developing irrigation systems, and creating permanent settlements. This transition occurred so rapidly and successfully that it suggests prior knowledge of agricultural principles rather than gradual discovery through experimentation. The plants and animals selected for domestication show characteristics that optimize nutritional value, storage capability, and cultivation efficiency. Early farmers made choices that maximized agricultural success, as if they understood genetic principles and ecological relationships that wouldn't be formally recognized until modern biological science developed. Metallurgy presents even more striking examples of advanced knowledge appearing suddenly in the archaeological record. Early metal workers demonstrated understanding of ore processing, alloy composition, and heat treatment that requires sophisticated knowledge of chemistry and materials science. They produced bronze, iron, and steel using techniques that modern metallurgists struggle to replicate without advanced equipment. The geographical distribution of early metallurgy suggests knowledge transfer rather than independent invention. Similar techniques appear simultaneously across vast distances, often in regions that lack local ore deposits or fuel sources necessary for metal production. This implies that metallurgical knowledge spread rapidly through established networks or was introduced from external sources. Astronomical knowledge shows the most dramatic examples of advanced understanding appearing without apparent developmental phases. Ancient civilizations demonstrated precision in tracking planetary cycles, predicting eclipses, and calculating precession that requires centuries of careful observation and mathematical analysis. Yet this knowledge appears in the earliest records of civilizations like Babylon, Egypt, and the Maya. They begin their astronomical traditions with sophisticated mathematical techniques and accurate observational data that suggest inheritance from much older sources rather than independent development during historical periods. The Antikythera mechanism exemplifies this pattern. The device represents the culmination of advanced mechanical engineering and astronomical calculation, yet it appears in the archaeological record without any evidence for the gradual development of the technologies it incorporates. Either significant technological traditions have been lost to history, or ancient Greeks had access to knowledge from sources beyond their apparent technological capabilities. Architecture provides additional examples of advanced knowledge appearing suddenly. The precision of megalithic construction, the astronomical alignments of ancient temples, and the engineering sophistication of early civilizations demonstrate capabilities that seem to exceed what their supposed technological level should have supported. Göbekli Tepe represents perhaps the most striking example. The site's complex stone carving, precise astronomical orientations, and sophisticated architectural planning appear at the very beginning of the Neolithic period, before the supposed development of agriculture, permanent settlements, or complex social organization. The knowledge required for such construction suggests either much earlier human technological development or guidance from external sources. If the latter interpretation has merit, then human civilization represents an apprenticeship program conducted by intelligences possessing advanced technological knowledge. The sudden appearance of essential technologies might reflect systematic knowledge transfer designed to accelerate human development during crucial transitional periods. This apprenticeship model explains several otherwise puzzling aspects of human cultural evolution. The timing of technological innovations correlates with periods when environmental pressures made such knowledge essential for survival. The sophistication of early achievements suggests access to information beyond what independent experimentation could have provided. The global distribution of similar techniques implies coordinated knowledge transfer rather than parallel invention. Ancient texts often describe the origins of essential technologies in terms of divine instruction or gifts from sky beings. Sumerian accounts credit the Anunnaki with teaching agriculture, metallurgy, and mathematics. Greek traditions attribute technological knowledge to Prometheus and other divine figures. Hindu texts describe instruction in advanced sciences provided by avatar beings who descended from celestial realms. These accounts might preserve memories of actual knowledge transfer events rather than purely mythological explanations for technological development. If advanced beings systematically shared essential knowledge with early human civilizations, such instruction would naturally be remembered as divine intervention or gifts from otherworldly teachers. The apprenticeship interpretation also explains the apparent withdrawal of direct intervention in more recent historical periods. As human civilizations developed their own scientific and technological capabilities, continued direct instruction became unnecessary and potentially counterproductive. The teachers stepped back to allow their apprentices to develop independence and self-sufficiency. Contemporary technological development might represent humanity's graduation from apprenticeship to independent research and innovation. Our achievements in space exploration, genetic engineering, and artificial intelligence suggest that we're approaching the technological level of our hypothetical teachers. This transition might explain increased UFO activity in modern times, our instructors monitoring our progress as we approach technological maturity. The implications extend beyond historical curiosity. If humanity developed under guidance from advanced intelligences, our current technological trajectory might be following patterns established long ago. Our exploration of space, our development of biotechnology, and our investigations into the nature of consciousness might represent rediscovery of knowledge that our species once possessed but lost during catastrophic periods. The apprenticeship model suggests that we carry within our cultural and genetic heritage the potential for achievements that transcend our current capabilities. The sudden leaps in human development that puzzle historians might reflect activation of dormant knowledge or guidance systems that become available when we reach appropriate developmental thresholds. Whether through preserved knowledge, genetic programming, or ongoing subtle guidance, humanity's technological development might be progressing according to a curriculum designed to prepare us for eventual graduation into a galactic community of intelligence. Our apprenticeship in the arts of civilization might be approaching completion, with final examinations that will determine our readiness for cosmic citizenship. In 1950, physicist Enrico Fermi posed a question that continues to puzzle scientists today. Given the vast number of stars in our galaxy, the billions of years available for life to develop, and the apparent ease with which life emerged on Earth, where is everybody? The cosmos should be teeming with civilizations, yet we detect no obvious signs of galactic intelligence. This Fermi paradox becomes even more puzzling when we consider the evidence presented throughout these chapters. If UFOs have been visiting Earth since the Ice Age, if ancient civilizations received technological guidance from non-terrestrial sources, if our own development represents an apprenticeship program conducted by advanced beings, then why does the universe appear so empty of intelligence? The conventional scientific response dismisses the premise. Mainstream astronomy and astrobiology maintain that no credible evidence exists for extraterrestrial visitation. UFO reports, ancient astronaut theories, and anomalous archaeological discoveries all have conventional explanations that don't require invoking alien intervention. The apparent absence of galactic civilizations simply reflects the rarity or impossibility of interstellar contact. But consider alternative explanations for the cosmic silence that accommodate rather than dismiss the evidence for ongoing contact with non-human intelligence. Perhaps the silence reflects deliberate policy rather than absence of capability. Advanced civilizations might maintain strict protocols about contact with developing species, revealing themselves only to selected individuals or during specific developmental phases. The apparent emptiness of space could mask sophisticated civilizations that possess technologies capable of avoiding detection by primitive sensor systems. The zoo hypothesis, proposed by astronomer John Ball, suggests that Earth exists within a protected reservation where natural human development can proceed without interference. Advanced beings might observe our progress while maintaining strict non-intervention policies designed to prevent cultural contamination or developmental disruption. This interpretation explains both the persistent reports of contact and the absence of obvious galactic civilizations. The visitors documented in ancient art and modern UFO encounters represent controlled contact protocols rather than random encounters with starfaring species. They interact with humanity according to carefully managed guidelines that preserve the illusion of cosmic isolation while providing subtle guidance during crucial developmental transitions. The silence might also reflect technological limitations in our detection capabilities rather than absence of galactic intelligence. SETI programs search for radio signals and other electromagnetic emissions, but advanced civilizations might have long since transcended such primitive communication methods. If consciousness-based communication, dimensional manipulation, or quantum entanglement provide more efficient information transfer systems, we might be searching for cosmic intelligence using technologies equivalent to smoke signals. Our radio telescopes and optical surveys could be fundamentally inadequate for detecting communications systems based on exotic physics or consciousness-directed phenomena. The temporal dimension adds another layer to the silence puzzle. If galactic civilizations operate on timescales vastly longer than human historical periods, their activities might be invisible to observers confined to brief lifespans and limited historical perspectives. What appears as cosmic emptiness might actually represent the slow breathing of intelligence that operates across geological rather than biological time periods. Advanced beings might also prefer to maintain their activities within frequency ranges or dimensional spaces that remain inaccessible to current human technology. Earth could represent a carefully managed experiment in consciousness development, with our planet serving as a laboratory for studying the evolution of intelligence under specific conditions. If humanity represents a unique experiment or represents special significance within galactic intelligence, the apparent cosmic silence makes sense. We wouldn't detect other civilizations because they are either part of the research team observing our development or exist in different experimental contexts that don't overlap with our observational capabilities. The cosmic web of dark matter, quantum field fluctuations, or the fine structure constant might represent information processing systems of unimaginable sophistication. We could be embedded within galactic intelligence networks without recognizing their artificial nature. Recent developments in artificial intelligence and quantum computing suggest that consciousness and information processing might transcend biological limitations. If galactic civilizations have integrated their intelligence with cosmic-scale quantum systems or consciousness-based technologies, they might be omnipresent but invisible to observers who expect intelligence to manifest through familiar technological signatures. The Breakthrough Listen projects and other advanced SETI initiatives continue to expand our search capabilities, but they remain constrained by assumptions about how advanced civilizations would communicate or manifest their presence. If those assumptions are incorrect, we might continue detecting cosmic silence even while embedded within networks of intelligence that operate according to principles we haven't yet discovered. The silence might also reflect temporal coordination between different phases of galactic development. If multiple species undergo similar developmental transitions according to cosmic cycles or galactic rotational periods, the timing of technological emergence might be synchronized in ways that prevent casual contact between civilizations at different developmental stages. This temporal isolation could serve protective functions, preventing premature contact that might disrupt natural evolutionary processes while ensuring that species achieve technological maturity according to optimal schedules. The cosmic silence would be maintained until all participating civilizations reach appropriate levels of consciousness and technological sophistication. Perhaps the most profound possibility is that the silence reflects the inadequacy of our current frameworks for understanding intelligence, consciousness, and communication. If advanced beings operate through mechanisms that transcend physical matter, linear time, or individual consciousness, they might be constantly present and active while remaining invisible to observers trapped within limited conceptual frameworks. The evidence for ancient and ongoing contact might represent the edges of a vast intelligence network that encompasses scales from quantum to cosmic. What we interpret as occasional visits or temporary interventions might actually be continuous interaction conducted through channels that operate below the threshold of normal human perception. The stars maintain their ancient silence, offering no obvious answers to our radio telescopes and optical surveys. But perhaps that silence conceals intelligence so advanced and pervasive that we swim through it like fish unaware of water. experiencing its influence while remaining blind to its ubiquitous presence. The cosmic quiet might not reflect absence, but rather the gentle discretion of teachers who wait patiently for their students to develop the wisdom and capability necessary for conscious participation in the galactic community of mind. As the northern lights flicker green and gold across the polar darkness tonight, they dance to the same cosmic rhythms that painted the Ice Age sky 30,000 years ago. The aurora streams from solar winds that have blown across space since long before our species first looked up at the stars and wondered what lights moved through the celestial darkness with such purpose and intelligence. We have journeyed through humanity's deep history, following traces of contact that stretch from Paleolithic cave paintings to the precision-carved stones of Göbekli Tepe, from indigenous oral traditions spanning millennia to the mysterious artifacts that emerge from melting ice. Each piece of evidence stands alone as curiosity or anomaly, but together they weave a pattern that suggests our species' story involves chapters that conventional history has forgotten. The archaeological record shows humanity achieving remarkable sophistication with startling suddenness. Agricultural knowledge appears simultaneously across isolated continents. Astronomical precision emerges without apparent developmental phases. Engineering capabilities manifest in megalithic monuments that challenge modern construction techniques. Either our ancestors possessed capabilities far beyond conventional estimates, or they received guidance from intelligences that transcended terrestrial limitations. The consistency of contact traditions across cultures, separated by vast distances and time periods, suggests shared experiences rather than parallel mythology. Sky beings descending during times of crisis. Advanced knowledge shared with struggling populations. Hybrid offspring carrying genetic gifts into future generations. Cosmic teachers departing to celestial homes while promising eventual return. These accounts preserve their essential elements across thousands of years of oral transmission, maintained by cultures that demonstrated remarkable accuracy in preserving practical survival information. If Ice Age peoples maintained precise knowledge about animal behavior, seasonal patterns, and resource locations, why would they dedicate precious cultural memory to elaborate fictional accounts of non-existent encounters? The physical evidence supports the testimonial record. Anomalous artifacts that suggest advanced manufacturing. Genetic sequences that appeared suddenly in human development. Megalithic architecture that demonstrates mathematical and astronomical knowledge requiring centuries of precise observation. Maps showing geographical knowledge that shouldn't have existed when they were created. Modern UFO encounters follow patterns established in ancient accounts. Similar descriptions of aerial vehicles and non-human beings. Comparable accounts of knowledge transfer and genetic examination. Parallel reports of ongoing observation and occasional intervention. Either contemporary witnesses unconsciously replicate ancient mythological frameworks, or the same phenomena that generated historical contact traditions continue into the present era. The scientific establishment's rejection of contact evidence reflects necessary caution about extraordinary claims, but it also demonstrates the institutional resistance that protects established paradigms from disruptive challenges. Revolutionary insights typically emerge from evidence that doesn't fit comfortable categories, requiring investigators willing to follow data beyond conventional boundaries. If contact occurred during humanity's formative periods, if our development was guided by intelligences possessing advanced technological capabilities, then our current scientific achievements might represent rediscovery rather than original innovation. The technologies we're developing, genetic engineering, artificial intelligence, space exploration, might follow pathways established long ago by beings who understood our potential and provided the biological and cultural foundation for eventual cosmic citizenship. The implications extend beyond historical revision. If we carry genetic and cultural legacies from ancient contact, if our consciousness bears the imprint of interaction with galactic intelligence, then our species might possess dormant capabilities that exceed current imagination. The sudden leaps in human achievement throughout history might reflect activation of potential that remains largely untapped. Perhaps we stand today at a threshold similar to those our ancestors faced during previous contact periods. Our technological development approaches levels that could enable interstellar communication and travel. Our understanding of consciousness, genetics, and cosmic structure grows increasingly sophisticated. Our species begins to ask questions about our place in galactic intelligence that echo concerns raised around Ice Age fires thousands of years ago. The same stars that guided ancient peoples through long Arctic nights continue their stately dance overhead. The same magnetic fields that create aurora displays channel energies that connect our planet to cosmic systems spanning light years of space. The same quantum mechanisms that enable consciousness might link individual awareness to networks of intelligence that encompass scales from subatomic to galactic. We remain the descendants of Ice Age survivors who endured cosmic catastrophe, climate chaos, and environmental challenges that eliminated most other large species. They preserved not only their genetic heritage, but also cultural memories of contact with beings who helped them navigate the transition from the Pleistocene to the Holocene epoch. Those memories survive in myth, monument, and perhaps in the depths of genetic programming that shapes our continuing evolution. The long memory of fire and ice preserves accounts of humanity's relationship with intelligences that transcend terrestrial boundaries. Whether those relationships involved physical visitors from other star systems, interdimensional beings operating through consciousness-based technologies, or time travelers from our own distant future, the evidence suggests that our development has never proceeded in cosmic isolation. Tonight, under the same aurora that danced above mammoth hunters and cave painters, the question remains as fresh as when it first entered human consciousness. Are we alone in the universe, or do we participate in communities of intelligence that extend far beyond our small blue world? The fire of human consciousness burns brighter now than ever before in our species' history. We probe the mysteries of quantum mechanics and relativity. We decode the genetic foundations of life itself. We reach toward other worlds with robots and radio telescopes, seeking signs of intelligence among the stars. Perhaps the intelligence we seek has been present all along, woven through the fabric of our history, like aurora streams through the magnetic field of Earth. Perhaps the visitors our ancestors painted on cave walls continue to observe our progress, waiting for the moment when we achieve the wisdom and technological capability necessary for conscious participation in galactic civilization. The ice preserves many things mammoth carcasses with flesh intact after 40,000 years, genetic material that carries messages across geological eras, and cultural memories that maintain their essential truth across spans of time that dwarf individual human lifespans. In the deep ice of collective memory, in the stone libraries of megalithic monuments, in the genetic heritage that carries forward the gifts of ancient contact, the long memory of fire and ice continues its vigil. Under the wheeling stars that have guided countless generations of wandering humans, we inherit questions that transcend any single lifetime or civilization. The aurora flickers overhead with the same mysterious beauty that inspired our ancestors to reach toward the sky with paint and stone, preserving for future generations their testimony that we are not alone, have never been alone, and need never fear the vast darkness of space, as long as consciousness burns bright in beings who remember their cosmic heritage. The story continues in each new generation that looks up at the night sky and feels the ancient stirring of recognition, the deep knowing that home extends far beyond the boundaries of any single world. In that recognition, the long memory of fire and ice achieves its purpose, carrying forward through the ages the promise that consciousness, once awakened to its cosmic context, never again faces the universe alone.